It was already dark outside. It was raining heavily. A man was running down the stairs and shouting something. Suddenly, lightning broke out in the sky and hit the ground, just where this man was. The blow instantly incinerated the man. Someone called out to a man named "You damn doc," but he did not respond, so the man called him again. The guy in the suit who was sitting on a chair in the middle of the room suddenly came to his senses. 3 people were sitting in front of him in the same formal suits, but unlike the guy in front of them, there was a table with different papers and gadgets. The man on the right asked the guy about how he cleans drinking water. The guy smiled amiably and explained that he uses a special cleaner developed by the state. The man who asked the question yawned, covering his mouth with his hand. The man on the left said he would then ask the next question. He turned to "You damn doc" with a question about why he chose their company. They looked at his resume, but it didn't list any talents or anything else. The man asked the guy if he thought it was a waste of time. "You damn doc" apologized, referring to what had just been said. The man irritably explained that the guy came for an interview with a large company, and at the same time does not know how to do anything. The guy asked why they then posted this vacancy, and the man said that it was because they were obliged by the law against discrimination of the untalented. But he added that in reality things are different. "You damn doc" clenched his fist and thought he was hearing that hurdy-gurdy about the untalented again. After the world became aware of the dungeon, people discovered an unprecedented potential in themselves. They called him talent, and he, in turn, led to a sharp leap in civilization. Someone said that the discovery of talent has become a well-being for humanity. Damn doc believed it himself, but only until he realized that he had no talent. The man said that their company is working for profit, and untalented like him are useless to them. The man in the middle laughed and said that they didn't have talent either, so at least they should have a conscience. "You damn doc" exhaled and asked if these people understand that they are now engaged in real discrimination. The man on the right asked uncertainly what the guy meant, but he interrupted him, asking what they wanted to say then. The man began to speak louder. He asked if he had said something wrong. He added that they themselves were tired of people like the guy. They have no talent. What kind of position can we talk about at all? He asked the ladies of the dock if he understood where he was and what he was doing at all. The guy leaned forward slightly and asked that it was a crime to hope for a human attitude. And then, with a serious look, he told them to apologize. But the men had a different vision of the situation. They said that this guy should apologize because he wasted their time. "You damn doc" slowly stood up and asked for an apology, but he was answered only after him. Suddenly the guy took out a dictaphone and said that he had recorded everything. This action shocked the men, and the guy summarized that there was obvious discrimination against the untalented on the recorder and recognition of the placement of non-existent vacancies. The once self-confident man laughed nervously and offered to defuse the situation. Damn doc turned to the exit and was shouted after him that they did not mean that they were not going to apologize. One of them grabbed the young man by the hand and told his colleagues to apologize. However, the guy just said that he would see what the Human Rights Commission would say to what they had just said. You damn doc left the building in a rage. He cursed loudly that he didn't have talent, but that didn't mean he didn't have pride. He received a notification on his phone, which stated that his request to the Human Rights Commission had been considered. He pulled back his tie with the words about this good of humanity, when suddenly he stepped into something. The guy, cursing loudly, lifted his foot, to the sole of which gum stuck. You damn doc, swearing even louder, said that if you chew your gum, then at least throw it where you need to. At that moment, a huge jet of water hit him right in his face, which soaked him from head to toe. The man with the hose in his hand immediately apologized, and the guy looked up with a completely devastated look. What a day it is today. He returned home by sunset. Damn doc went inside and saw that his window had been beaten by drunks again. An incomprehensible liquid was flowing from the window down the wall, right on the floor in his room. He, removing all the dirt and strange liquids, called Mom. He asked how she was and how they were feeding her there in the hospital. The woman replied that it was her fault that he was in trouble. If only his uncle would give her the money back. You damn doc shouted that he said not to mention this person in front of him. The woman said it was his uncle, so you can't say that. The young man replied that if he was one of those who repays debts, he would have already repaid them. And now he's probably already gone abroad. He came to his senses and said that he was not angry and apologized for shouting. You damn doc told her in a cheerful voice not to worry, she knows him. The guy has a higher education and a resume that is necessary, so he will succeed. And she shouldn't worry about hospital bills and it's better to just rest. He said he was fine and, after saying goodbye, hung up. He went upstairs with a gloomy look and went outside, took out cigarettes, which were the only joy in his life. But as soon as he lit a cigarette, it began to rain, which immediately extinguished it. He looked at the sky with fury in his eyes and, cursing loudly, threw the lighter with all his might. The guy shouted to the sky that at least this could not be taken away from him, because he is already living with the last of his strength. He loudly asked, addressing someone else, why he was constantly against the guy. To be honest, he doesn't care if God exists. Damdok hit his fist on the wet floor with the words that he did not want to live like this. He was not to blame for this, so someone should be held responsible for this. He looked at his reflection in a puddle and cried. At this moment, he was venting his anger at him. Was that the reason? A bright lightning flashed in the overcast sky. Damdok stood up and started shouting up, showing the middle finger. And at the same moment, lightning struck right at him. Soaring was visited by thoughts that he had died. The end of his worthless life had come. But if he was gone, then what would happen to his mother? He began to come to his senses and gradually open his eyes. The guy saw the sky in front of him and asked out loud if he was alive. A prism with a notification appeared in front of his eyes, which said that Damdok had a new vacancy. He sat up in shock, not taking his eyes off the notification window. The guy exclaimed a question about what else it is. The message began to change and the inscription this time read that the gods were waiting for him. There was a heavy downpour, and water flowed into the guy's basement apartment through the window. Damdok sat on the floor under this window and thought that God does not exist. He was struck by lightning for insulting God, although he was not even sure of his existence. Apparently, this is what is called heavenly punishment. Usually people after a lightning strike are either in a serious condition or die altogether, and there was not a scratch on the Damdok. If anything has changed, it's the strange notification hovering in front of him. The guy was sitting and thinking what had happened to him, since such a window is usually seen by people who have talent. He suddenly assumed that this lightning had awakened his talent, so he decided to check it out. The young man cleared his throat and turned to the window, but nothing happened. He wondered again, if it wasn't a window, then what? And why it looks like a notification about finding a part-time employee. Suddenly, the message in the window began to change after these words. An inscription appeared about the warning, then about the connection and, as a result, acceptance. Damdok suggested that it was a side job after all, and laughed. After all, that in real life, that here, his lot is just a side job. He sighed and thought that it was better to think positively, because he had nothing to lose, so he could seize this opportunity. He began to study the window in which there was a part-time job with the gods. The guy was surprised, because there is even sorting by world. He pressed the consent button to look, but a red window appeared with a notification that the guy didn't have enough divine power. With a puzzled look on his face, he asked something like that. Information appeared in the window that divine power is a common name for the power used by the gods. Damdok let out an exasperated sigh. He doesn't even have the talent, so where does the divine power come from? But there were thoughts in his head that he did not have a bad feeling, and this could be a chance to change his life. He has come to the decision that he will do it, and the vacancies of the gods remind him of Headhunter. The young man clicked on the job search and began to read those where divine power is not required. He found a suitable vacancy where it is necessary to create Midgard dungeons, and also divine power is not required, since it is a day job. He opened this vacancy to study in more detail. The employer is Thor, divine power and work experience are not required. The job is not difficult if the hired person is able-bodied and diligent, and lower-level gods are also considered for the vacancy. The number of working hours are recruited by agreement, and the salary is 12 Tor, where the payment is day-to-day. There was also an employer's note saying that Loki's henchmen were not being considered. Damdok thought that if it's about creating dungeons, then it's about those that are teeming with monsters. He was shocked because it turns out that it was the gods who created the dungeons. He looked at the payment and tried to calculate how much it was in his money, but there was no such information, so he decided that the currency of the gods should be worth its weight in gold. He pressed the respond button so as not to waste time. A bright flash of light illuminated first his room, and then another space. The guy disappeared into thin air and appeared in a place unknown to him. An electric current seemed to envelop his body. He cleared his throat and tried to figure out where he was and how he got there. The young man had never seen such a thing in his life and even thought that he was sleeping and was now having a lucid dream. At that moment, a monster crept up to him and rushed at the guy with a loud roar. Damdok screamed loudly, squeezed his eyes shut and closed his eyes. But the monster was quickly caught by the neck. A big muscular man appeared from a similar flash of light. He asked the monster about where his manners were, and then laughed. The man was much bigger than the guy, and there were no clothes on his upper body except for a fur cape. He turned his gaze to Bbtains and asked him if he was new. The guy stood in a stupor with his mouth open in horror, and the man greeted him and introduced himself. It turned out to be the son of Odin, the god of thunder and lightning, Thor. He was holding a monster in one hand, and with the other he slapped the guy on the shoulder with the words that he himself probably knows who the man is. Thor, laughing amiably, picked up the ladies of the dock in his hand and said that there was a lot to do, so they would talk on the go. He commented on the guy's body, saying that he is like a feather, and Thor hopes that he is at least a little strong. The young man looked at God and noticed the details. This is a big man with a shaggy beard, and in his hands is Mjolnir, so it's actually Thor. The man said that, judging by the appearance of the dock ladies, he was from the gods of the east. These words led the guy to think that Thor thinks that Dock is God. He looked around and everywhere there were different gods who were doing different things, and one of them was crushing stones like clay. The guy didn't know what kind of gods they were, but they were clearly not people. Bbtains came to the conclusion that he seemed to be the only person here, so he quickly replied that he was the guardian of one small mountain. Thor said with a smile that he had heard about the god of the mountain. They usually help people in trouble and he liked it. With these words, he slapped the guy on the back, from which he almost spat out his soul. God looked closely at the ladies of the dock and said that he seemed to be very imbued with human culture, because he was wearing human clothes. The young man looked at himself, laughed quickly and replied that he often descends into the world of people to find out how he can help. Thor, standing next to the guy, commented that the guy cares about them very much. And then he asked if it suited the guy, because now his job is to create places where people suffer. Bbtains averted his eyes and awkwardly agreed. Approaching some structure, Thor asked if the young man had heard about the labyrinth of the Minotaur, to which he replied in the affirmative and was about to ask why God asked such a question. But Thor interrupted him and turned his gaze away. God said that then the guy will quickly understand what's what. After these words, Bbtains turned his head to the side. The birds scattered in different directions, raising a strong wind after they flew away. And the dust settled down. His gaze opened up a view of a huge maze in which various lower-level gods were now working. Thor waved his hand in his direction and said that he had just been taken as the basis for this dungeon. So Bbtains will build the maze with them. Bbtains stood and stared at something with his mouth slightly open until he was called by another worker with ears like an elf. He called him to work because there was a lot to do. The guy, holding a pickaxe in his hands, said he was coming. All this time he was standing in front of a huge high gate, on top of which was a bull's head. The working gods who were standing aside and discussing something said that carts were needed for Sector E6. Bbtains, getting out of the pit, shouted that he had taken up an errand and was going. Another time someone asked for help in Sector A. The guy who was having lunch just now, with food in his mouth, shouted that he was already on his way. In another situation, God had not yet had time to voice the request in the sector, as the Bbtains was already on the spot in full readiness to help. One of the gods addressed him, noting that the guy was working hard, and also warned him to be careful not to fall anywhere. The young man with a smile on his face said that if he failed, he would hope that they would get him. After that, this god told him that that was all for today. God with fangs praised his work. He was interested in how the ladies of the dock felt after a working day, to which the guy replied with a smile that it was just physical work. God informed him that they had already sorted everything at this place, so they decided to go to the cart to catch their breath, and then go to the next point. While they were riding in the cart, the god with fangs asked the young man if all the gods in the east were such enthusiasts, to which Bbtains replied that it all depends on the character. God replied to his modesty that the guy was already being praised with might and main. Bbtains replied that it was embarrassing, and he thought about how good he was. He showed communication skills at all 200%. There is no question of any talents, since communication with the gods will bring much more benefits. The god with the fangs said that they would get out here and go on by themselves. He pointed to the driver and said that if they trusted him, he would demolish all the mines along the way. The guy in his head shouted, because he did not expect mines. He was walking with a box in his hands when suddenly a god with fangs shouted to Bbtains to look where he was coming. He pointed to the floor and explained that the symbol on the tile means that there is a mine here, so you need to look at your feet. The god pointed in different directions and grumblingly pointed his finger at other mines. The young man almost notably did not get into trouble. God asked him if he had never seen them before. Well, if so, it will serve as a lesson. He said that the guy himself probably knows that lately the higher gods require people to pass something like entrance tests before hiring them. And lower-level gods, like himself and Bbtains, are not supposed to do this, so they do this kind of work. Dungeons are constantly being built, so they have a lot of work to do. The god pointed in the direction of the gods coming out from somewhere and said that they had started creating a room a couple of minutes ago and seemed to have already finished, so the guy could go and look. Damdok stood in the middle of a huge room with columns at the edges, his mouth gaping in shock. And they built it in a couple of minutes. The guy thought it was crazy how they built such a huge thing. The Fang god said to put the box that the guy had in his hands on the floor. Then he opened it with the words that there is something in it that will make this place a real test. He opened the box, and they looked into it, and there was a big stone and strange threads. God explained that now it may seem that this is an ordinary stone, but then spiders will appear from it. And when they all hatch, this place will become a real headache. In front of them were dozens of such boxes with spider eggs. The young man looked into another box and asked what kind of monster was in it. God asked if the guy hadn't heard of them. It's a lizardman. Damdok stretched out his hand to the transparent part on the neck of the monster, but God said to be careful, since he is not ready yet. Besides, this is a vital point. The guy awkwardly scratched his head because he didn't know it. The god with fangs offered to go to the next room. He showed the room where the goblins are hiding, and those who reach here, in fact, will be at the finish line. In this room, more like a cave, it was quite cool. Damdok suddenly noticed something in the corner. Someone was standing there with his eyes closed, and then the goblin abruptly opened them and screamed in the guy's face, scaring him to death. And then he burst out laughing. The god with fangs also laughed and said not to worry, as he was just fooling around. But when the construction is finished, it will be a completely different matter. Goblins are quite intelligent creatures, so they are difficult to deal with. The guy with an unpleasant aftertaste agreed. They had finally reached the end of the maze. In this place stood the same huge gate that Damdok had been looking at for so long at the beginning of the working day. Behind them is the main boss. Suddenly, Thor appeared, who called the god of the mountains, that is, Damdok. He told him that he had heard everyone praising him here, and then asked how his work was going. The guy and the god with fangs bowed slightly, and the young man replied that everything was going well thanks to Thor's care. The big god, smoothing his beard, told the guy that he speaks beautifully, and then he asked if all the monsters had already been quartered. The god with fangs answered positively and added, pointing to the high gate, that only the last one remained. Thor praised them and, taking out the Mjolnir, said that in this case the working day was over. Lightning sparkled around him, and the guy, panicking, asked why he took out his hammer, to which Thor praised him and said that next time the guy would tell him what kind of dungeons they had in the east. He wished the guy a safe journey and, swinging a Mjolnir, hit the guy. Damdok bent over with a cry, but he was fine. This blow just teleported him back home. The guy was lying on the floor in shock. That's him being escorted from work, of course. He already thought that Thor was going to punish him for lying about not being human. The guy looked at his hand and tried to realize the reality of what was happening. This is not a dream or hallucination, but a real awakening. He really woke up. Suddenly, a notification appeared in the air again, which said that a salary was credited to the account of the young doc, as well as a check button. The guy excitedly clicked on checking the account. The inscription loading the store of gods appeared. A few moments later, Damdok saw the bill. He asked out loud what it was all about and called it crazy. The catalog of the gods store opened in front of Damdok, in which you could find anything. The omnipotent spear of Odin, Gungnir, which never misses the target, the armor of the Nemean lion, which neutralizes all physical damage, the necklace of Freya, which allows you to move between dimensions. This is the real shop of the gods. In it, you can also acquire the power of Thor, lightning strike, the power of Hephaestus, flame, the power of Ares, destruction. The guy was looking through the goods and could not believe that he could buy it all, because then he would be able to become a god in a human body. He has already imagined how everyone will praise him. It will make a strong change in his life. But his joy was short-lived, because a notification about the lack of divine power was displayed on the screen. And what did he expect at all? The cheapest power is the power of Ares, which costs 70,000 Taurus, which is a very high price. The guy began to look at what he could buy and stumbled upon talents. He stared at the screen in shock. Damdok was excited, as he could just buy talent, which was a huge joy for the untalented. He, wildly nervous, began to look at how much they cost. SS-level talent can be bought for just 12 Tori. This surprised the guy wildly, because the forces cost 70,000, and the talent is only 12 Tors. Several comments were written to the talent section, which said that who even needs something that mortals use and how they are still being sold. Another comment was that it would be better to update the section with powers, since the gods need powers, not talents. Damdok exhaled and realized what was the matter. No one just buys talents. He grabbed the screen and shouted that they were Zazril. These are SS level talents, not just talents, but such a high level, so also almost for nothing. He looked through a few talents until he noticed the SS level fencing talent. As a child, he liked to play with a sword, so there's nothing to think about, immediately decided to buy. The guy pressed the purchase button, after which an inscription appeared about the successful acquisition of talent. Damdok began to be enveloped in energy, and he wondered if everything had worked out. He went out of his way to get at least an F-level talent, and he got this one so easily. A window appeared with a notification of congratulations on your first purchase, as well as a special offer that is active only today. 1+1 promotion. As a gift you can get a product of the same level as its purchase. The guy was already crying a little from happiness. They will give him something else of the SS level. He opened the list and selected a talent for fighting. He exclaimed joyfully that he could now use both fencing and fighting. Suddenly, everything began to swim before his eyes. His head began to spin, and the guy began to fall in bewilderment. His whole body began to ache, and a window appeared in the air, which said that the body of the ladies of the dock was being strengthened for the use of talents. Increased lung volume and muscle strength. After some time, the strengthening of the whole body was completed. Memories of his mother, who apologized for the fact that he had problems because of her, began to pop up in Damdok's head. The guy replied that everything was fine, because now he has talent. He suddenly realized that he couldn't have it. Lying on the floor, he had not yet fully recovered and was muttering about talent. The guy sat down. He had a headache. He did not notice that he had passed out. He remembered that he dreamed of his mother, and then he thought in fright that it was all a dream. Damdok summoned a window that immediately appeared. It displayed information about the guy, his name and the status of the person. He also had the position of a lower level god. A line with talents now appeared at the bottom, in which fencing and SS level battle were indicated. He read his position and understood why he was able to work in the dungeons. Once untalented, but now he is a god. Life is such an unpredictable thing. His phone rang and an inscription appeared on the screen. Mrs. Cho Yoon Hwe, this is his mother. The guy with a big smile answered the call and said he had good news. But the woman did not listen to him. She immediately said that her son had never come to the hospital today. He asked what was the matter, but the woman repeated that he should not come and worry about her. Damdok asked why she was so suddenly, but he was not allowed to finish. He was asked if he was the guardian of Ms. Cho Yoon Hwe, to which the guy answered in the affirmative. He was informed that the situation was difficult, but they could not tell him all the details. It looks like a dungeon has appeared next to the hospital. They tried to reach him, but the phone was unavailable. The phone was lying on the floor and it was heard from it that until the situation got better, they would not be able to receive visitors. And then the question is whether the guy hears them. But there was silence in response, as the guy had long since run away, throwing the phone. He ran as fast as he could. His thoughts about his mother did not leave him. A helicopter was flying over the hospital. People in military uniforms and weapons in their hands were walking below. The woman was doing a live report from this spot. She said that they had arrived at the scene and, as can be observed, there were signs of the appearance of a dungeon everywhere. A man in uniform shouted into a loudspeaker that it was impossible to enter the territory and everyone needed to move away. The taxi was driving fast on the road towards the hospital. Damdok jumped out of the car and looked around. He was trying to figure out what was going on when a window appeared saying that the concentration skill was activated. Damdok was able to clearly see and hear a man with a loudspeaker in a crowd of people. He heard someone discussing that the government is summoning all hunters, to which he was asked if there are hunters with 8 stars here. The man answers in the affirmative and explains that this time the dungeon is particularly dangerous. The guy was standing in a crowd of people, but he still clearly heard who was talking about what. Someone wanted to take a picture against the background. Someone did not understand what was happening. Someone was just passing by. Damdok grabbed his head from so much information. He realized what concentration means. Most likely it happened because of the talents he bought yesterday. However, he didn't have time to think. He had to get to the hospital, so he began to make his way through people. He reached the military man with a loudspeaker and shouted to him that his mom was there, so he had to pass. The man shouted that it was impossible, as there are signs that they are dealing with a maze, so they can skip it. Damdok was surprised because of the maze. Lightning flashed in the sky and struck not far from the guy. People in a panic began to run away, knocking down Damdok. When everyone ran away, the guy began to get to his feet. He cleared his throat and asked what was going on. As soon as he looked up, he saw the entrance to the dungeon. It was a round gate that looked like a hole in space. The young man was surprised, because in the gate he saw the very maze in the construction of which he participated the other day. Bbtains stood in the middle of the dungeon construction and praised the beautiful view. The guy didn't understand until that moment what was going on. He could not have imagined that he would see him here near the hospital. He asked uncertainly why it was there, and then noticed a man on the ground who could not get up. Bbtains helped him up and asked if he was alright, to which the man said that he needed to get out of there as soon as possible. Suddenly the guy noticed something. He abruptly pushed the man aside and jumped away. A sword quickly flew between them and stabbed into the wall. The young man heard a hoarse groan and turned around. The man was pierced by a sword. He told the guy to run with the last of his strength. After that, he was thrown aside by the monster and stepped on him from above. It was the lizardman he had seen in one of the rooms of the dungeon, and he was not alone. The military quickly opened fire on the advancing lizardman. Bbtains barely managed to escape from the line of fire, and shouted loudly that a man was here. The monster that was running towards him noticed the guy and abruptly threw a sword in his direction. Bbtains was in a stupor from fright when suddenly the concentration skill was activated. Everything slowed down abruptly, and the guy clearly saw the sword that was flying at him. He, watching him closely, grabbed him right by the blade from the blunt side, thereby stopping him. Such actions surprised him to such an extent that he grabbed his hand, unable to believe that he had caught him. He noticed that a lizardman was planning to attack the man next to him, so he shouted to him to be careful. But the man closed his eyes in fear and did not move. Bbtains shouted either to the military or to a man, and then quickly jumped up and attacked the monster himself. He grabbed him and threw him to the ground. The soldier shouted to stop the fire, as there was a civilian there, and the second man asked if he was a hunter. The military replied that even if he was a hunter, he was there without armor. At that moment, the guy was surrounded by lizardmen, and, trembling with fear, he thought that he was acting on emotions. But what should he do now? The monster swung at the guy and he screamed in fear and apologized. A window with a notification about the activation of the concentration skill appeared in the air again. Bbtains, without realizing it, dodged the blow. Another monster began to attack him, but he also dodged his blow. He was visited by the idea that this is the skill of concentration, as if he had drunk 100 cups of coffee. He clearly saw the movements of the lizardmen. He decided to act, and at the moment when the monster swung, he took a step forward and raised his fist to the side, preparing to strike. At that moment, a window appeared and the skill talent for SS-level battles was activated. Bbtains made a few quick punches, from which the monster flew back. Bbtains did it, there are 2 left. The lizardman quickly began to attack, and the guy stretched out his leg forward, thereby ducking from the blow. He swung the same leg and landed a blow right on the monster's jaw. The second one began to attack him. He quickly ran with a sword in his hand. A sharp blow, but the place he hit was empty. Bbtains was in the air above him at that moment. He made a jump right before the lizardman's blow and now, with one movement, pinned the monster to the ground with his foot. The military, who were watching what was happening, could not believe their eyes. This guy now laid the lizardman with his bare hands. A man not in military uniform came out from behind them and asked Bbtains with a smile which guild he was from. He said the guy's face was unfamiliar to him, but he was good. He approached the young man and, holding out his hand, introduced himself as Namgundok from the Sangong Guild. He told Bbtains that it was unlikely that a guild hunter would come here alone, so he asked if the guy was working alone. To this, the guy replied that you can say that. They shook hands in greeting. Namgundok said that they had come to clean up this dungeon and invited Bbtains to join them. The guy thought that he was no longer an ordinary person, and if he didn't stop the monsters now, they will continue to appear. He said with a little excitement that it was a trifling matter and headed forward. They entered the maze. The guy suggested turns, rejoicing in his heart that, thank God, he remembers all the moves. Although thanks to the fact that I walked on them hundreds of times. Suddenly he stopped everyone and said that he would lead from this place. The man in the raincoat and mask called it nonsense. He turned to the guy, calling him a fellow freelancer, and said he had no idea where he got out of, but he needed to know his place. Bbtains replied that there would be traps and mines next, that's why he says. Namgundok laughed and thanked him for his concern, but he thinks the advanced team has already taken care of everything. The guy picked up a stone from the ground and threw it forward. As soon as he touched the ground, swords flew out of it, which broke the stone into small pieces. Bbtains said he was sure the advance party hadn't been here yet. The young man pointed to the tile and explained that it was activated under pressure, and the swords were cast from a special alloy. They would pierce most armor like some kind of foam. It's simple, but much more dangerous than they think. Namgunduk asked how the guy knew all this. Damdok thought they shouldn't know that he helped build it, so he coughed awkwardly and said it was a company secret and moved on. They had passed some part of the way when the guy stopped again. He warned that it would be even more dangerous further. With the torch that he had in his hand, he illuminated the gate, on which there was a drawing of a huge spider. He warned that everyone should get ready. The leg crushed a huge spider. People in raincoats were walking through the dungeon. One of them was swearing because the whole shoe was stained, and the second said that at this rate they would all get pickled. The first guy repeated after the briefing that the web that is everywhere in the room is not only a connection of spiders, but also traps, so it's easier to burn everything. The second hunter whispered in the ear of the first that it was the guy who said so, whether they could trust him. Maybe he's a spy from another guild who's trying to disrupt their operation. The Damdok they were talking about was standing not so far away from them and heard everything. The guy was looking at the room where he had unloaded a bunch of spider eggs. He knows where they're hiding, but there's no point in making things so complicated, so he'll just burn everything down here. He thought that hard work, unlike laziness, bears fruit. Damdok had already brought the torch to the web when the concentration skill was activated, and he heard a voice asking if anyone was here and asking for help. The guy abruptly stopped everyone and said that it would not be possible to cope with fire since there was a person here. Namgunduk held a gathering, where he explained that signs of survivors were found in the stone chamber. Now their priority is to save people. As soon as they enter, you will need to line up in a defensive position. They don't know what condition the survivors are in, so it's worth refraining from long-range attacks. He also added that he doesn't know exactly how, but Damdok seems to know where the survivors are. The support group will operate under his command. This announcement surprised the guy. Namgundok suddenly appointed him commander, although he had never done anything like this. He was about to address the head of the guild when someone called out to him. The girl in the raincoat said that, thanks to him, they got to this place without hitting a single mine. She held out her hand to him and told him they were counting on him. Damdok shook her hand uncertainly and replied that they would do their best. But, to be honest, the problem was that. But before he could finish, she interrupted him. The girl told him not to worry so much. As for the edicts, he can just tell them where the survivors are, they'll figure out the rest. It will be easier for everyone this way. The guy scratched his head because of the simpler words, and then embarrassedly said that maybe she would let go of his hand, but she interrupted him again with a question about whether he uses a weapon. He said that he had never tried it, and the girl, letting go of his hand, said that it would not hurt him to have a sword, or even two. She adjusted her hood and said she was leaving. She said what she wanted and left. Damdok thought that she had called him by name, but there was no trace of her. The hunters took their positions to enter. Namgundok and Damdok were the first to enter the room, followed by the rest of the hunters. It was suspiciously quiet, but don't let your guard down. The young man widened his eyes as he heard something, and shouted that they were from above. There were giant spiders on the ceiling, which began to jump down. One hunter was pinned down, and he began to cry for help. Namgunduk threw his axe right at the spider and shouted that they should not get lost and follow the plan. He ordered everyone to form a defensive position and avoid contact with the poison. Damdok led a support group to search for people. He ran forward until he noticed the cocoons and called the others. They began to free the survivors from the web, but the spiders were already running towards them. Damdok said he knows a safe place, so let them follow him. Namgunduk, while fighting the spiders, thought that, in truth, he was tormented by doubts. The guy knows the moves and structure of the dungeon and even where to look for survivors. A talent he had never heard of. Damdok with a man on his back shouted that there were people in that direction too. A hunter with a piece of paper in his hand showed where the victims were and told them to evacuate people from the dungeon. He reported to the commander that all the survivors had been evacuated. There are casualties, but injuries are minimal. The head of the guild said that this is a good start. We need to continue in the same spirit with those who can still fight. He told the hunter to tell the others to take a break, and then he turned to Damdok with the words that he would like to talk to him. Some of the hunters did not like this gesture very much. Namgunduk shared that, taking into account the 2 policemen and hunters, a total of 10 people fell into the traps. Among them were members of their advanced group. If it wasn't for Damdok, they would have burned them all. They laughed awkwardly, and the commander said that the talent in the guy is what you need. One might think that he built this dungeon with his own hands. The guy laughed loudly and replied that is it possible to build a dungeon? He's not some kind of god. The commander laughed and said he was joking. Damdok nervously said that it was necessary to gather everyone as soon as possible and continue. They came to a high gate, and the hunter asked what it was, something from the Inca civilization. The guy replied that there were goblins there. The hunter replied that it was only goblins, and he thought that the boss would be next, and the other replied that it was somehow sad even. Bbtains was thinking about the dominance of goblins and how to deal with them. He hoped that the concentration skill could help in this. The guy turned to everyone and asked if he could go there alone, to which one hunter with blonde hair slapped him on the shoulder and said that since their head had praised him so much, he believed in himself. He added that they were masters at everything about goblins, and if he was scared, he could wait outside. Namgunduk replied that he didn't really like sending the guy there alone either. Damdok said that then he had no choice, so they'll have to obey him when they get inside. The commander realized that he had some kind of plan and agreed. The blonde hunter clenched his teeth. He wanted to use this opportunity to impress the head. But because of this guy, he would not be able to stand out. He can't let him steal his finest hour. He nodded to another hunter, giving a sign, and said that then it was possible to move out. They entered the room, but there was no one there, just an empty corridor. But this is only at first glance. Damdok felt something inside, so he said to be quiet. But the hunter with blonde hair and his friend began to joke about him, saying that there seemed to be nothing here, or a huge cockroach would crawl out on them now. His friend picked him up and said that if there were goblins here, then the guy should stay close so that they would cover him. Suddenly all the lights went out, and the guys were about to turn on the light when Damdok shouted that it was impossible. However, the hunter did not listen to him. He said that this was nonsense and they needed to see at least something to fight. And how can he call himself a hunter if he's so afraid of goblins? He, turning on the flashlight, commented that cowards can just stay behind. Damdok shouted for everyone to get down now. Everyone except these two hunters ducked. The one standing behind said that nothing had happened and he was just scared for nothing. But the hunter with the blonde hair who turned on the flashlight paused. He barely turned around, and arrows were sticking out of his chest. More arrows pierced his body, and the hunter fell. Panic began. No one understood where they came from and what happened at all. Namgunduk ordered no one to move, and everyone froze. He turned to the ladies of the dock and asked if that was why he told them not to turn on the lights. The guy answered in the affirmative and explained that they were attacking in the direction of light. It seemed strange to the commander, because they had heard the hunters enter, so why didn't they attack right away? Damdok said they were playing with their victim, wanting to enjoy their fear of the dark. The commander said they couldn't fight without seeing an opponent. Even if it means they have to suffer losses, they will have to turn on the lights. The guy asked about what if they can fight even if they can't see anything. Namgunduk wasn't sure if it was possible, but the guy said to rely on him. Damdok got up and walked forward. He addressed the team saying that he knew they couldn't see anything, that they were nervous. He will do everything possible, and they should not move and make noises until the guy says that it is possible. He tried to concentrate and remember this feeling again. At that moment the concentration skill was activated. Damdok sensed the presence of every goblin. A few moments passed, and he said that it was possible to turn on the light. There were fallen goblins on the floor, and in his hand was the last one. The guy strangled him by the neck until the moment when he stopped resisting. The hunter, who had escaped death before this miracle, was annoyed, because he could not understand what kind of talent the guy had, what kind of tricks he was doing. If he had more time, he would have put them all down, so why is this guy constantly standing in his way? Namgunduk was in shock. You can go crazy. He told Damdok with a smile that he had been doing this all his life, but this was the first time he saw a hunter like him. The guy awkwardly replied that he was just lucky, although he himself does not know how he manages it. He offered to continue the journey. They finally reached the end of the maze. The team was standing in front of the very gate behind which the boss's room is hidden. The guild leader was looking at the door behind which the dungeon boss was now. They opened the gate a crack and slowly began to enter. There was nothing to be seen in the room. They already thought it was an ambush again. However, Damdok carefully looked ahead and said that the boss was there. At the end of the room was a small staircase with a red carpet that led to the throne. The dungeon boss was sitting on it, and there were 2 torches on both sides of it. Namgunduk noticed that, as expected, he looks impressive. It doesn't look like the dungeon master is going to attack first, so they have time to work out a strategy and explore the room. A notification window appeared in front of the young doc that the sacrifice of the Minotaur had begun and 5 victims had to be selected. The guy was perplexed by the sacrifice, but it seems that no one else sees it. He thought it might be a trick. There must be some clue on how to get out of the dungeon safely. He came to the decision that it was worth sharing what he had learned. The young man called Namgunduk and said he had something to tell him, but the commander replied that they were discussing a plan, so couldn't it wait? Damdok seriously replied that it might have to do with the passage of the dungeon. They moved aside, and the guy began to explain to the commander the essence of the matter. An irritated hunter watched them from the side, as Doc again takes his laurels for himself. He decided that this time he could not just stand with his arms hanging out and went somewhere. He crept closer to the boss with a crossbow in his hands. He was thinking that strategies are for losers who beg for mercy and fear, and he is not going to dance to anyone's tune. The hunter wanted to show them his F-level shooting talent. He thought that one shot would be enough for a guaranteed promotion. The hunter tried to aim, but if he had been a little closer, he would have definitely hit the bull's eye. With such intentions, he took a couple of steps until his foot was above a special tile. He was completely overcome by greed and didn't notice it. Doc immediately sensed something was wrong and shouted to the hunter to stop. However, he just got even more angry and shouted back that the guy just wants to take all the laurels for himself alone. He shouted that while the boss was standing idle, he would finish him off. The hunter took a step, thereby crossing the border. A notification appeared in the air that they had entered the center of the maze. Now 5 victims will be randomly identified. A strange energy enveloped the bodies of the victims. The hunter who crossed the border, Doc, Doc, and 2 other hunters were trapped. The commander swore at the hunter, as he did not even understand what he had done. Doc said that now was not the right time to discuss the correctness of decisions, since the dungeon boss was standing in front of them. He shouted furiously, and a barrier appeared around the victims, which did not allow them to go beyond it. The hunter, because of whom all this is happening, began to pound the wall, but nothing came of it. The boss abruptly began to attack this hunter, but Duck managed to grab him and evade. He immediately stood up and shouted to everyone to take their positions as discussed. They should not panic. They need to remain calm and continue to attack with the current number. The commander said he would buy some time, so they need to be ready. Duck quickly ran at the boss, and when he hit the place where the man was standing, he missed. The commander at that moment jumped high into the air and hit the monster with all his might. The 2 hunters who were trapped with them stood praising the commander and rejoicing that perhaps their help would not even be useful. Doc was amazed. It's a great shot, which is on a completely different level. However, the monster did not receive even a small wound, as if it had steel instead of skin. The guy shouted to the commander to be careful as the monster swung to strike. Duck barely managed to dodge. He came to the conclusion that it wasn't that the boss couldn't dodge. He just doesn't need it. He slightly hooked the man, but he already had a severe wound on his shoulder. He thought that he would have to be collected by bones. The commander gave the order to surround the boss, as well as to avoid a direct collision. We need to find his weaknesses. Duck instantly orients himself and gives commands. He is a real veteran of the dungeons. However, this is the best they can afford. The Minotaur is not even going to go to them, as if distance means nothing to him. The boss raised his weapon, and it seemed familiar to Doc. This is the power of Thor. Duck shouted that the boss was up to something, so he needed to be prevented. This is their chance. The commander rushed to attack, and at that moment, Doc shouted that it was dangerous. But it was already too late. Duck couldn't slow down. His movement was a mistake. But then a guy appeared. He kicked the boss in the jaw, but it didn't help. The boss activated Thor's power and struck. The bright light of lightning lit up the space, and everyone flew to the sides. The hunters who stayed behind the barrier couldn't believe it. This monster defeated their commander. There was no way they could get inside. Hunters have never seen such a thing. They wanted to help, but it was unclear how, because even the commander could not do anything. Doc was hitting with all his might, but at least he had a strong opponent. After so many years at the bottom, he finally got the talent. And now he saw the light at the end of the tunnel and will die ingloriously like this. But something prevented him from giving up. He stretched his hand forward to where the sword was lying on the ground. There's something else he hasn't tried. And if a guy dies like that, then there will be no rest for him. He rose to his feet, sword in hand. Doc didn't try so hard to go to the other world in such a place. He swung his sword and energy enveloped his body. The boss was watching his movements carefully, and the guy told him to get ready since he wasn't going to give up so easily. His talent for SS-level fencing was activated. Doc confidently stood with a sword in his hands and was ready to advance. A bright energy enveloped his entire body and sword. The reflection of the guy who called the monster a cow was visible in the weapon. The boss became even fiercer. His eyes glowed red, and Duck, who was lying on the ground without strength, thought that he could not even scratch the monster with his axes, and the man who didn't hold a sword in his hands couldn't lay him down. The commander tried to get up and tell the guy to get out of his way, but he couldn't utter a word, and then he coughed up blood altogether. He mentally apologized to the guy, and Doc was standing in front of the boss attacking him. who was shouting ferociously and trying to grab the guy. The sword strike, which was not even visible due to the frenzied speed, struck everyone present, including the boss himself. It looked as if Bbtains had dissected the space. The guy was behind the boss, and his horn flew off to the side. Everyone who saw it, including the monster, was speechless. There was a momentary silence in space. Bbtains thought that at first it was just excitement, but the moment he picked up the sword, confidence came. He'll chop it up. He sees a real sword for the first time, let alone fighting, but the guy already felt like it was part of his body. Here he is, a talent for fencing. The furious boss turned around and ran at the guy and punched him, but missed. However, at this moment, one after another, many wounds began to appear on his arm, from which blood gushed out. Then everything happened in the blink of an eye. Namgundok counted 6 attacks in an instant, or 7. He didn't even have time to follow. The man thought that the guy was more into martial arts, but he turns out to have been a swordsman all this time. However, he underestimated him. The guy took a stance, stretched his left arm forward, and bent his right hand, in which there was a sword, so that the blade was parallel to his right hand. His body was surrounded by energy, and he was incredibly focused. Bbtains clicked, as the boss turned out to have a pretty thick hide. The hunter who was the cause of everything that was happening grabbed his head and screamed. He said he knew Bbtains would miscalculate. The boss cannot be defeated with this level of abilities, so they have no chance against him. They will all die. The commander frowned and closed his eyes because of such nonsense, since the level of swordsmanship of the guy is comparable to the best swordsmen of the East. Bbtains is a capable guy. The only problem is that the sword is about to break. There were a lot of serifs and cracks on it, because of which the weapon could simply fall apart. Bbtains was mad because he waved them a few times, and he's no good for anything. At this rate, he will soon be left empty-handed. He can only get into a vital organ the first time. He resolutely began to move towards the boss, dodging his blow. He didn't hit him with a sword, using his talent for fighting, but he didn't even move. Bbtains made a diversion to distract the boss and force him to open up. He kicked him in the jaw with all his might, in such a way that his neck opened up. The guy was waiting for this moment and, catching the sword more comfortably, swung to strike. But suddenly the boss noticed this trick and closed, attacking in response. Bbtains landed, but a little more and the sword will break. And there is no point in fighting with bare hands, so the next blow is his last chance. If only there was an opportunity. And at that very moment, the boss decided to use Thor's power when he is most vulnerable. The guy was enveloped in power, and Namgundok, noticing this, realized that the guy was going to go ahead. The commander was thinking that he should help him, when he remembered what Bbtains had said in the room with the goblins. They can fight even if they can't see anything. That gave him an idea. The commander got up and called the hunter, saying that he had a good thing in store, so this was his chance. Bbtains was standing in front of the boss at that moment and thought that this was the only chance. He began to attack the boss with incredible speed and, making a swing, struck. However, the sword could not stand it and broke. This is the end. Bbtains let go of the handle and it fell to the ground. Suddenly, another sword flew into his hand. It was that hunter who threw him. He shouted for the newcomer to finish him off. Bbtains, with all his strength and speed, stabbed the boss in the stomach. 5 hours have passed since the last monster appeared from the dungeon. News channels broadcast that as soon as new details appeared, they would immediately report. The man who was standing next to the gate to the dungeon noticed that someone was coming. The guild members showed up from there. Bbtains led us by the arm Gundoka. They finally got out. The guy asked the commander why he was so sure that the guy would catch the sword, to which he replied that he was not sure. He just remembered how the guy said that you can fight when you can't see anything. And wouldn't he have been able to catch a dagger flying out of nowhere then, so he took a chance. Bbtains laughed awkwardly and replied that if he hadn't caught it, he would have let everyone down. In any case, they survived thanks to the commander. But Namgunduk gave a negative answer because it was the guy who saved them all. He slapped the guy on the back and said that people were waiting. He made the greatest contribution to this sweep, so he should broadcast to the people. The guy was surprised that he, who had been looked down on all his life due to lack of talent, made the greatest contribution. He's definitely not the same as before. This touched him very much, and he proudly raised his fist up, thereby showing victory. Salem University Hospital Sonsim. Bbtains first went to check on his mom's condition. She was lying in the ward and sleeping, so the guy was able to calmly exhale. There was news on TV, which showed a conversation with the person who made the greatest contribution to the clearing of the dungeon that appeared in the middle of the city. The screen showed the ladies of the dock, and at the bottom of the screen there was an inscription that read about the fastest sweep. The guy was asked about how everything went, how he feels, and also that the cleanup took place so quickly. Really, there were no dangers. He was bombarded with questions about where he came from, what his name was, what guild he was from, since no one had heard of him before. In addition, he was asked about his skills, because they heard that the guy at a fairly high level owns both a sword and martial arts. Bbtains could not even insert a word into the stream of questions and asked to speak more slowly. He exhaled and began to answer questions. Where he came from, the guilds, it doesn't matter. Several times they faced danger, but Bbtains fought to protect the person dear to him. This answer refuted the rumor that he was a newcomer to the Sangong Guild. Therefore, other questions flew about the fact that, in his opinion, there is no need for guilds. Recently, there have been discussions about the arrogant behavior of the hunter community, which is why they assumed that the guy's goal is to criticize the World Union of Hunters. The young man turned off the TV because he felt ashamed and couldn't watch it anymore. He opened the news feed on his phone, and the first was a photo of the guy when he sent the lizardman flying with one blow. When the journalists managed to take it off, it was a hot topic for discussion. The sudden appearance of an unknown hunter Bbtains at the dungeon in the center of the city. The head of the Sangun Guild, Namgunduk, and its members note the guy's incredible sword skills and the ability to adequately assess the situation. The video of the battle with the lizardman was also attached. Suddenly, a notification window appeared saying that Bbtains, a low-level god, had gained popularity, so the divine power was increased to 1,000. This surprised the guy, since it seems that this divine power was written about in vacancies. The notification has been updated. Since the guy has received 1,000 points of divine power, he can place a new job search ad. Bbtains decided not to miss such a chance and immediately clicked on the search confirmation. There was a vacancy in the Forge of Hephaestus, where the recruitment of security managers was carried out. The employer is Hephaestus himself, and the amount of divine power required is from 1,000. Work experience is not required, but there was a warning that fights are possible to some extent. Bbtains read the information and decided that it seemed nothing complicated. He stretched out from fatigue. He wanted to go home to rest and then come back to this. But a notification window appeared that the 3 gods had already sent their resumes for this vacancy, so it will be closed soon. The guy jumped up quickly because he didn't want to lose such a dusty job. He quickly pressed the response button and was immediately teleported to the place. Bbtains landed hard again. Is it really impossible to arrange a softer transfer? He looked around and thought he got to the right place. In the center was a huge red ball of energy. It seems that this is the Forge of Hephaestus. It was so hot that sweat immediately began to flow from the guy. He said it was like he was in a sauna and was about to cook. They didn't come up with air conditioners here. There was a big man standing behind him. He asked the guy that he was the new guy here. The man greeted and introduced himself as the owner of this forge, Hephaestus. Bbtains immediately jumped away from him and bowed in greeting. He also introduced himself and explained that he had come to get a job with him as a security manager. Hephaestus laughed and asked what kind of guy greets a person. The young man was in a panic, thinking about whether God had heard him or not, and who in general was pulling his tongue to say all this out loud. God looked at him carefully and said that all the rumors were true. The patron of blacksmithing, the god of fire Hephaestus, called the guy the bastard of the mountain, who, out of love for mere mortals, so fearlessly fought monsters in the dungeon of Thor together with people. He said, laughing, that it was not surprising that their hot-tempered Thor was imbued with them. Bbtains is not amiss, and the guy scratched his head and, also laughing, thought that Hephaestus had not heard him. God turned to him and asked about the fact that the guy said that he needed to install an air conditioner in the forge. Bbtains bowed again and quickly apologized. Hephaestus turned away and said that enough greetings, now he would tell him about the work. He smiled and said it was better to see once than hear 100 times. At that moment, a trumpet appeared in his hand, and he said that the guy would understand everything himself now. God warned that it might be a little loud, and blew the trumpet. It was very loud. The young man screamed and covered his ears with his hands. 3 people came running to the call. They asked if Mr. Hephaestus had called them. The fire god put his hand on Bbtains' shoulder and told the 3 dwarves that he would be their manager for today and told them to say hello. 3 workers shouted that the dwarves welcomed him and were happy to serve. The guy awkwardly replied that he had never worked in the forge, but he would try. Hephaestus laughed and said not to be so modest, because beginners are also good. Perhaps everything is easier than the young man thinks. Hephaestus whispered in the lady's ear that these comrades, of course, are hardworking, but the handles are playful, so there are problems with them. Like these small dogs, like small ones, but much angrier than big dogs. If God is distracted, then something will be lost. Like, for example, last week, the pendant that he wanted to give to Freya, the goddess of beauty and love. Bbtains was in a stupor because they were even stealing her things. Hephaestus replied that this was the whole trouble. Although you can't tell from the look of it. God said that today he needs to go to Olympus. In his opinion, nothing terrible will happen here without him. He took something out of his bag and threw it into the guy's hands. A system notification appeared, in which a description of the item appeared. This is the Club of Hercules, which is made of olive wood. It is a replica of the club with which Hercules defeated the Nemean lion. The effect of it is the chance of a 10% stun. Bbtains read the description and was shocked if it was too much. Hephaestus said with a smile that he had gone, and he entrusted his forge to the god of the mountain. A portal opened in front of him that radiated a bright light, and the young doctor, hiding from him, shouted that Hephaestus had not told him what to do. Would he just leave him with that club? God was wondering why the guy was asking this, because as long as he was stronger than them, everything would be fine. He said that dwarves are much weaker than he thinks. At that moment, the guy felt a chill on his back because of their looks. Hephaestus said goodbye and disappeared, and Bbtains turned uncertainly to the workers and said that they had already introduced themselves. The guy's friendly smile was reacted strangely. It looks like Hephaestus knew that this could happen, so he gave the guy a Hercules club. Bbtains confidently said that the gentleman dwarves should just relax, since he had just received a cool weapon that could hurt them very much. He stood confidently with a baton in his hand. However, almost immediately, machine guns were pointed at him. Bbtains was covered in cold sweat, and the dwarf, finishing his cigar, said to the guy adios. The guy immediately plunged into darkness. Bbtains heard part of the conversation. The dwarves were discussing that the shift had ended a long time ago, but one of them suggested that he stay for a while, and the dwarf would share his pay with him. The guy barely opened his eyes and tried to figure out if he was alive. Through his half-open eyes, he saw two dwarfs holding and discussing a necklace made by Hephaestus. One of them heard that God was going to give it to the goddess Freya, and if you sell it, you can get rich. Bbtains was angry. He tried to get up, but noticed that his hands were tied behind his back. The dwarves paid attention to him. The guy woke up earlier than they thought. Although they normally gave him sleeping pills like that, so someone assumed that he was also a god. The young man lowered his head and seriously told them that they were fearless. However, did they wonder what the consequences would be after what they did to one of the 12 main gods of Olympus in his own forge? The dwarves hesitated a little, and the guy said that this was the last chance, and before it was too late, they had better untie him. They stood with serious faces and then roared with laughter. Did he really think to scare them with Hephaestus? If they were afraid of him, they wouldn't do anything. A third dwarf appeared and said that they had taken everything of value, so you can slowly get out. Another dwarf answered him that he would now pump the guy with more sleeping pills and catch up. Bbtains quietly slipped the dagger into his hand while they were talking. The dwarves laughed at the guy, since such losers come to work part-time. To think, they didn't even think that everything would come out so easily for them. Bbtains said they would regret it, but the dwarves just mimicked him and laughed again, and Bbtains at that moment cut the rope and repeated his words. Getting up from the floor, he shouted that they would regret it and hit them with a baton. The well-beaten dwarves were tied up, and the guy stood in front of them and said that they forced him to resort to violence. He put the blade back in his sleeve and said that he would have been in over his ears if he hadn't asked Namgunduk for it. He often recalled the words of that girl in the dungeon. She said it wouldn't hurt for him to have a sword, or even two. He decided that he would have to thank her if they met. The guy noticed that the bound dwarf had something in his hand. It was a necklace for Freya. At this time, other dwarves were loading ingots into the car, as well as weapons and everything else. They all gathered because their boss, whom they called Fire Fist, wanted to say something. The chief of the dwarves turned to the brothers and said that they were a people endowed with the spirit of the burning mountains. The best miners and brave warriors work for thanks, but they have pride. He asked when they were treated the way they deserve to be treated. Everyone burst into silent tears at these words. The boss went on to say that the owner of this place, Hephaestus, had humiliated them. Today they will repay the disrespect they received and take revenge on Hephaestus. They burst into shouts of support. Bbtains made his way to them and thought that they were an army of bald heads, like ants. He was hiding behind an ingot and wondering what to do. When suddenly the ingot was removed and he was noticed, he tried to talk about the wonderful weather, but they had already taken out the machine guns. The guy, running away from a hail of bullets, hid behind a column. He covered his head and shouted that these gnomes are strange, since they shoot at everyone right and left. The boss came up to the column and stated that he got out of it. Looks like he beat the ones they left watching him. He lit a cigar and addressed the guy, calling him a lower-level god. He informed him that they were now robbing the place. However, they don't care about him since they only hate Hephaestus. It would be a shame to die like that, so they'll give him a choice. Either he helps them clean out the forge and becomes their accomplice, or he leaves and keeps his mouth shut. The boss told him to think about it properly. He wouldn't make the wrong choice for the sake of some pennies. Doc thought that if he ran away, it would be the end of his reputation. At this rate, he may not be able to earn extra money anymore. That won't do. The guy went through so much to get these abilities. In general, first Hephaestus will get rid of it when he sees the looted forge. There are 2 chairs in front of him now, either kill them all or be killed by Hephaestus. And he thought that the work would be dusty, as it is. He came out from behind the column with his arms raised and a baton. The head of the gnomes said that this was the right decision. He called the guy a lower-level god again, which was already starting to infuriate the ladies of the dock. The guy suddenly decided to ask a question. He asked about the fact that the boss and Hephaestus were not partners. So what's the reason? And if Hephaestus finds out, he won't leave it to them, although he's not sure about that. One of the 12 gods of Olympus, don't they understand what will happen if he gets angry? Doc said that he would send them alive to be melted down, and the ashes would go to hell, straight to Cerberus. He raised his finger up and shouted that they were fools, whom even the punishment of heaven does not frighten. At that moment, a bullet flew past his head, right into the columns behind him. The formidable dwarf told him to shut up, since he doesn't even understand who he's baring his teeth at. There will be no mercy for him. He said he would beat the crap out of him and started shooting at his legs. Doc began to jump away with screams as the head of the dwarves told him to stop. He didn't have the words, but he wouldn't let it go. He asked about how Doc called God Great Master Hephaestus, I think. The dwarf said that the lower-level god doesn't know anything, so he wants to clarify something to him before he makes mincemeat out of him. He began to tell me that Hephaestus is not a great or a master, but just a piece of garbage. Doc asked about it again, and the boss confirmed it, although it would be more correct to call him a thief. One day Hephaestus came to them on the mountain where they lived and said that the dwarf had a glorious sword in his hand. He asked if they would like to work with him, and he would provide everything necessary. And after they followed him here, the dwarves became real slaves. The guy was at a loss and asked about what they wanted to say, that Hephaestus made slaves of them. The boss continued the story. He did not pay them a penny, but he promised a 5-day and a 6-hour working day, and free time in addition. Strewn with sweet promises of a beautiful life, they did not even notice the spit in their heated souls. If not for all the wasted years, and wealth, and fame, everything would belong to them, the dwarfs. But because of Hephaestus, who set it all up, nothing happened. If he's not a thief, then who is? When everything finally came to the boss, there was no longer a dwarf in this place in which the spirit of the master would remain. All they have left is a desperate revenge. Doc replied that everything was clear and he understood what they were talking about. They are right, and really a real garbage. He looked up at the boss and said with a smile about the envious trash who wants to destroy those who are better than him. The boss was angry. He asked the guy if this was really all he could say. They pointed their weapons at him again, but the guy stretched out his hand to stop them. He asked them to listen to him and asked if they understood how it would look from the outside. If they run away like that, they will become thieves for people. Can the dwarves, who are great craftsmen and proud warriors, really accept that their reputation is tarnished? Of all this, the chief caught only words about great craftsmen and proud warriors. And the young doctor continued to say that they have another option. How to take revenge on Hephaestus. It just so happened that the guy is a warrior himself, and in his hands is a weapon made by Hephaestus. Since they call themselves warriors and craftsmen, the guy suggested that they leave these games. Instead, they can fight him with a real weapon that they created. Defeating a warrior who fights with the weapons of Hephaestus, wouldn't that be the perfect revenge? If this is not the case, then they should just admit that God is better than them and run. The dwarf who shot at the guy asked about how he dares to say something when he already has one foot in the coffin. He pointed the gun at the guy and told the boss he wasn't going to listen to it anymore. This is not what Doc expected. But then the boss answered. His eyes were burning, and he said that he was a fiery fist. He would not run away. He added that the language of a lower-level god is suspended, simultaneously rolling up his sleeves. The guy in the shower cried with happiness that he fell for this provocation. The boss agreed to fight the guy, but he should be ready to take responsibility for calling himself a warrior. If he can't hold out until they prove that their weapons are superior to him, for suggesting that the dwarves run, he will beat him until his bones are pulverized. He picked up a huge hammer and began to attack. The boss hit the gnomes with a hammer at the place where the guy was standing, but he dodged. However, the shock wave passed by and the column behind which the guy was hiding collapsed and fell. The dwarf threw away his cigar and asked the guy if he was surprised. Did he really think that they were too tough for him without guns? He confidently stood up and looked at the guy. Does the guy really think he can win? However, Doc was ready. He warned them not to surprise them later. He quickly ran at the dwarf and swung at the head, but the man dodged and hit the guy with a hammer. But Doc was behind him and asked where the man was looking, as it was only his illusion. The boss made a blow behind his back, but the guy dodged right against the direction of the blow. The man praised him, but Doc said it was too early to be surprised and made a swing. But the dwarf was ready for this, so he jumped up and kicked the guy right on the shoulder. The blow was strong, there was already a trace left. The man replied with a smile that the little one would not wait. They increased the distance from each other, and Doc said that for the first time he got off his feet, it hurt. He praised the man in return. The boss said that the guy's stance immediately seemed strange to him, but it's good that he immediately demonstrated his limit. The young man was surprised, as he understood everything only from his stance. The man said it was very simple, as he had never seen a man who held a blunt weapon like him. He said that these precise blows already give goosebumps. It had been a long time since his heart had been pounding like that. He, taking off his shirt, said that one of two things was here. Either the guy was his equal, or even higher. The dwarves who were watching from the side were shocked. The boss sincerely apologized for calling Doc a low-level god and for underestimating him. And to prove his sincerity to him, this time he will show respect for his strength and will fight in full force. The atmosphere of the battle immediately changed. It became hotter. They began to fight. The hammer flew towards the guy, so he blocked the blow with a club. The young man jumped into the air, intercepted the weapon and made a blow, but the man dodged, swinging back. They crossed weapons with burning eyes. The dwarves on the side supported them with shouts, their hearts pounding like mad. It's like the sounds of a forge. The vibrating air, the roar of metal, such familiar sounds of the forge. Its fervor seems to knock on their souls. The man with a smile said that the guy has the spirit of a blacksmith. He remembered the young man's words that he is an envious trash who wants to destroy those who are better than him. He has nothing to object to the guy, because it's easier to blame the capable than to admit his own inability. On the day when they received Hephaestus' offer, they, like frogs, first came out of the well into the light, faced a storm of emotions and dreams that constantly reminded them that they were not good enough. According to the man, this is a pathetic story, because everything that happened after they got out of the well turned out to be a waste of time. He fought with the guy in full force and remembered it all, how his hammer was knocked out of the man's hands with a blow of a club. Tears were streaming from his eyes. This is really a complete defeat. He gave up, closed his eyes and just stood there waiting for his end. Doc swung for the final blow, but a large flash of light appeared in front of the boss. The club that was flying with all its might at the man was stopped with a palm. The dust settled, and Hephaestus, who appeared between them, said that was enough. Everyone was very surprised by his appearance. He said that as soon as he left, there was a real chaos here. He even thought at first that he had gone into the wrong place. God was standing with a very serious look. He really wanted to know what happened here in detail. This is the era of the struggle of good and evil, the era of the battle of people and ferocious beasts. Everyone wants to enter the University of Martial Arts and become the strongest person defending the world. And he, Su Lai, has always been a candidate for the role of this strongest person. The young man was popular with girls who knew him as the number one of their class. They boasted of his appearance. Su Lai didn't even expect that before the high school entrance exams, he would encounter unforeseen incidents. The black-haired youth was perfecting Kai. Here he has overcome the 10th level, here is the 90th. He has already overcome the 1000th level, and then passed the 9999th level. Su Lai didn't understand why he had already passed 10,000 levels of Kai cultivation, but still couldn't lay the foundation. The Kai purification, as shown by his bracelet, had reached 9,999 levels and exceeded the limits of the controlled dimension. Out of the entire school, he was the only one left in the process of Kai purification. The girl who tracked the young man's indicators said that the main classes are mostly already at the stage of forming the foundation. Once considered the strongest, it can become garbage for society overnight. Once defeated by Su Lai, people laughed at him and said that no one could imagine that their number one, before the entrance exams, would become garbage. Su Lai heard remarks from everywhere that he was still at the stage of Kai purification. Some doubted that there was any benefit to them in being at the stage of laying the foundation. However, the arrival of evil forces always takes you by surprise. People have a new danger. The school where Su Lai studied received information that there are suspicions that followers of the Order of Ermengarde are operating in their city. Ermengarde is a sea serpent from Scandinavian mythology, the third son of Loki and the giantess Angrboda. Code Red was announced. Everyone should prepare for the first level of danger. An unknown danger was approaching. Here, a woman was undergoing medical treatment, lying in a small crater. She and the medics were surrounded by school students. It is said that the lower creatures will never be able to overcome the higher ones, and this is the rule of the world. But Su Lai doesn't believe it. He fights with people, creatures. It was because he had gone through 10,000 levels of Kai cultivation. Wuji City, Kaiyuan High School. Recreation Room 025. A blue glow could be seen from behind the doors of the room. The young man in the room was doing push-ups, and a blue aura was flowing from his hands. The young man counted to 100 push-ups, and then got to his feet. He had a toned body, black hair, and the same color eyes. He said out loud that on that day he would finish the exercises with push-ups that he had done earlier. The young man decided to try something again, hoping that something would change. A blue-colored aura began to form on his arm. The bracelet on his arm announced that the cultivation of Kai had been discovered by student Su Lai, that youth. Statistics management has begun. From the bracelet came the calculation of the levels of Kai improvement. Here the 10th level was overcome, then the 90th, then the 1000th, at which Su Lai was already tense. But, nevertheless, the bracelet continued counting, and reached the number of 9,999 levels. The bracelet announced that this number is the limit of the control measurement of Kai purification levels. After that, one by one, error notifications began to appear. A whirlwind rose around Su Lai, and a blue aura enveloped her hand. The young man exclaimed that it was happening again. Namely, there was an explosion. Su Lai's outer clothes were torn to shreds. He covered his eyes with one hand, closing them, and put the other on his hips. He said out loud that there had been an explosion again. Su Lai peeked at his palm, which contained a broken electronic bracelet sparkling with lightning. The young man noted aloud that unless after the 10th level it is possible to continue laying the foundation. But he was already at the 9,999th level. For him, the question was whether the bracelet was a marriage or a fake. But then someone called Su Lai by name, while shouting that for what reason the young man was practicing in the room, and also clarified about the explosion. After that, a demand was made from this person to open the door, as Su Lai's time for privacy was over. Su Lai agreed, addressing the man as the headman Lu Xing. After that, he went to the door and opened it. Behind this door stood a girl in a school uniform resembling a sailor. She had long brown hair gathered in 2 low ponytails, and her eyes were brown. In her hands, the girl who was Lu Xing was holding a tablet and a pen. Lu Xing began to scold Su Lai, saying that many times other students complained to the teacher about him. She asked the young man if he knew how many she had stood up to for him this month. If it hadn't been for her, after the explosion, everything would have ended in the shelter. The girl, after these words, went into a room in which a fire was burning in places and smoke was billowing. Lu Xing was struck by the amount of damage in the room. She waved her hand in front of her face, driving the smoke away from her nose, and asked Su Lai about what he was practicing in the room. The young man, covering his eyes with one hand, replied that the device for determining the level was exploding for the 5th time. Lu Xing prepared to write something down on a piece of paper attached to the tablet, while asking the young man what stage he had reached in his cultivation. On this, she received that Su Lai is at the stage of Kai purification. The girl was surprised by this, because everyone else had already moved to the stage of laying the foundation. Su Lai was only at the stage of purification, which she told the young man about. After these words, she asked him about the level that he was able to achieve. Su Lai replied to Lu Xing that he had reached the 10,000th level. The girl with a smile told him that he did not even know how to lie, because all beginners know that there are only 10 levels at the stage of Kai purification, and the laying stage is already higher. Lu Xing marked Su Lai's level on a piece of paper. Besides him, there were other people there, as well as the girl herself. The young man himself stood and was silent at this moment. Lu Xing also told him that he himself knows that they all need this solitude to get into a good university. The girl reminded Su Lai that the entrance exam to the martial arts university will be held next month, and only students who have passed the foundation stage can register for the entrance exam. Lu Xing became sad, and then said that in the other classes, almost everyone has already moved to the laying stage. But while they are under protection, the number of monsters outside the school is growing every day. Their number has doubled since last year. According to experts, people are returning to the famine period, and this time it will last at least 50 years. As soon as this period comes, the monsters will only become more ferocious, and their number will only grow. Losing has a fear that it will be difficult to cope with the current group of warriors alone. Therefore, starting with the entrance exams at their school, students until the moment of admission to the university, they will have twice as many resources as before, and the study time at the university will be reduced to 3 years. Applying to the martial arts university has become even more difficult this time. The girl informed Sulai about all this. Closing his eyes, the young man replied that he understood everything, and also told Lu Xing that if she had nothing more to say, then she could go. With a displeased face, the girl turned around and then walked out of the room. Sulai angrily punched the wall, while saying that he only had a month left. If he can't go to the foundation stage, then he definitely won't be able to enter the martial arts university. But then a notification came to the young man's phone. Keeping one hand on the wall, he took the smartphone in the other and looked at the messages that came to him from Lu Xing. The girl wrote to Sulai that she had sent him a link to the martial arts forum. The teacher told her that if there is something that the young man does not understand, then you can look there. The second message was a link to the website of the martial arts forum. Sulai followed the link and posted a post where he wrote that he was looking for solutions, because everyone else had moved to the stage of laying the foundation after the 10th level, and he was already at the 10,000th level of Kai purification. He was asking about the reason why he still can't move on to the next stage. He asks for help with this issue, as well as to dispel his doubts. Below his post there was another one where a foundation teacher would help with practice. 10 minutes later, his post had only 6 views and 0 reactions. The young man was sitting against the wall in the same place and was dissatisfied, because his post is generally a sensation. Sulai assumed that he might be the only one in the world who faced this problem. Until now, when you reach the 10th level in the stage of Kai purification, the foundation is automatically created. This is the current law of the cultivation world, and it cannot be changed, so there must be something wrong with his situation. Sulai dropped the phone from his hand and, still holding one hand on the wall, buried his head against the wall and put the other hand on his chest. He felt that the aura in his body was really strengthening, but it was not concentrated at one point. It seemed to flow throughout his body. The young man wondered if such a thing was possible. He even called himself a colander. The loudspeaker announced that the teachers and students of the school would gather in 30 minutes at the martial arts stadium for a meeting. All the people in the school ran to the gathering place. A large young man was running up the stairs, telling others to make way for him. He shouted that Uncle Ben was only at 10% of his leg strength, and they couldn't keep up with him anymore. If they want to be admitted to martial arts classes, they have to work hard. At some point, this young man overtook Sulai and then stood in front of him. He had a large build, brown hair and brown eyes, and he was taller than Sulai by 2 heads. That young man pointed his finger at Sulai and asked if it wasn't the former first place, calling him by name. Also, he said that Sulai looks shabby, but Sulai was not at a loss and with a smile, remembering, asked the name of that big guy. The young man assumed that his name was Zhao Sha, which meant stupid. That made him angry, and he shouted to Sulai that his name was Zhu Tao and let him remember it. Sulai asked Wu, as he called him, Zhu Sha, what he wanted from him. At the same time, the young man asked Zhu Tao what was not enough for him last time, recalling the picture of how he sat on him and, holding the collar of his t-shirt, hit him in the face. One of the people watching their exchange said that this week, Zhu Tao was constantly looking for Sulai to compete, but every time he lost. Zhu Tao was called thick-skinned. The whispering girls assumed that he was a masochist. Zhu Tao was furious, but then his henchman told him that he had spied on the privacy report. Sulai was still at the stage of Kai purification. Zhu Tao thought at that moment, noting Sulai's level, that they would see how arrogant he was now. The big young man laughed at Sulai and told him that hardly anyone could have imagined that their number 1, before the entrance exam, would become worthless. Continuing, he said that he could not even build a foundation for laying the foundation. He, according to Zhu Tao, will be crushed at the moment by a person who is at the 3rd level of laying the foundation. Sulai was surprised that he was able to move from the purification stage to the 3rd level of the laying stage in a month. Others were surprised that Sulai was in the stage of Kai purification. They did not believe that this was possible. It seems that Zhu Tao will win this time, because everyone knows that the purification stage will never be able to defeat the laying stage. With a smirk, Zhu Tao told Sulai that the strong always wins over the weak. These are the rules of their world. He remembered how one of the teachers told him to keep trying, and then, maybe in a few years, he would catch up with Su Lai. Then he was visited by memories of how Zhu Tao, standing with a bouquet of scarlet roses, was rejected by a girl who then apologized and told him that she liked Su Lai better. Zhu Tao grabbed Su Lai by the breasts and furiously started telling him that he was ignored by the teachers. He was rejected by a girl he liked, and it was all because of the young man. Because of him, he suffered all this time. To this, Su Lai told him that it was all because, maybe it was all because he himself had been trying badly all this time. After that, he asked Zhu Tao while pushing his hand away from him, what does he have to do with it at all? This angered Zhu Tao even more. After that, he embraced himself with flames and raised his fist to strike with the words that Su Lai prayed that he would not see Uncle Ben again in his next life. Su Lai covered himself with a completely blue aura and thought that this was the third level of the laying stage. It's powerful. At the same time, the young man clenched his hands into fists and raised them at chest level in a pose for defense and attack at the same time. When Zhu Tao almost flew up to Su Lai, his eyes opened in surprise, and after that, he flew against the wall, crashing into it, and screamed that he was in pain. His henchmen were surprised by this, so they immediately ran up to him and began to clarify whether he was okay. Su Lai himself did not understand what had happened, because others said that the purification stage could never surpass the laying stage. The young man wondered about the reason why Zhu Tao flew to the wall. Here, the girls said that this is the strength of their number one, because even at the stage of purification, he was able to defeat a person at the stage of laying. The young man turned around, throwing on his hood, and walked in the other direction from them. One of Zhu Tao's henchmen told him that he had treated the man badly and was running away, and also warned Su Lai that he would go to the teacher and report everything to him. Another henchman added that there were witnesses around. Su Lai stopped and smilingly asked the other students if they had seen how badly he had treated Zhu Tao. They said that he flew away by himself, because how can the purification stage defeat the laying stage? Perhaps Zhu Tao himself hit and flew away. The young man went on, smiling and closing his eyes. Su Lai decided for himself that to begin with, he would go to the gathering, and then maybe the teacher would answer his questions. Zhu Tao was leaning over at that moment, and he was sick. There were already some people at the gathering place and sometimes birds were flying. Su Lai walked along the blue glowing road to the same color portal. A loudspeaker hovered next to him, wishing Su Lai a successful completion of the entrance exams, and also told them to try together in the future. Su Lai at that moment thought that if the problem with the laying stage was not solved, it was unlikely that he would be able to enroll. After that, the young man found himself on the training ground of Kaiyuan High School. This was the 100th admission ceremony of the Kaiyuan school. Someone said that Su Lai had finally come. The young man greeted a large teacher with glasses. This teacher was the supervisor of the third group of the third year of high school, Sun Huade. He asked Su Lai how the month of seclusion had gone. The young man answered him that he had encountered a small problem. The teacher adjusted his glasses and said he would look at his progress during this time. After that, Sun Huade approached Su Lai, and then a blue-colored aura appeared around the two of them and a small wind rose. The teacher was surprised, and his hair, which was located on his head on the sides of the bald spot. The man at this moment was thinking that breathing is very dense, not that he, but even the director is not able to do such an elementary thing at this level. He wondered why Su Lai was still in the purification stage. Sun Huade was still standing with shaggy hair, and Su Lai at that moment said that he had heard about a major breakthrough in technology that had recently occurred, so he asked him if the teacher would like to try to save his hair. The teacher slapped the young man in the face with a notebook and told him that, instead of worrying about him, it was better to let him worry about himself first. The Martial Arts University has already met the students of the school, but there is only a month left before the exams begin. At the moment, Su Lai has to overcome the stage of purification within 1 month and go to the stage of laying. Otherwise, the young man will have to change his specialty, which Sun Huade warned him about. Also, the teacher said that Su Lai doesn't need to worry so much, because everything will settle by itself. After all, his future won't end at school. Sun Huade put his hand on the young man's shoulder and informed him that as soon as he was more collected, the trial of the kingdom would begin. Su Lai can leave by himself, saying any reason, because they don't know his cultivation base. He doesn't need to tell them either. The young man wanted to say something to this, but was interrupted by the teacher, who said that he knew that Su Lai would not give up so easily. After these words, Sun Huade asked him what level of Kai purification the young man was at. Su Lai replied that he was at the 10,000th level. The teacher was amazed and asked again about his level, but then they were interrupted by a scream and something falling on the training ground, and after that, a cloud of dust rose there. Someone shouted, asking for quick help to the wounded man. Sun Huade and Su Lai ran in that direction. A black-haired woman with glasses and torn clothes was lying in a small crater. Sun Huade began to treat this woman on his own, and the medics with a stretcher had already approached them. Meanwhile, the teacher said that the woman has a very serious injury. The injury was probably inflicted by someone at the peak of the laying stage. These words surprised Su Lai, and he asked the man about it. Something flashed in the sky and the students who saw it called others to turn their attention to it. It was the headmaster of the school, as the students said. One man yawned and then said he was terribly tired. This man was a school security guard, and his colleague, also a security guard, was sitting not far from him. The guard who yawned was sitting with his back leaning against the window and said that he had not slept last night, and therefore then asked another to monitor the situation for him while he took a nap. The second one, in response to his words, reminded him with displeasure that they currently have working hours, for which the guard who did not get enough sleep told him not to worry, because the strongest gathered at Kaiyuan High School. It is unlikely that something will happen. After these words, he sprawled on a chair, covered his eyes with his cap and got ready to sleep. But behind the glass that was behind him, 5 people appeared. In front of these people stood a tall, beefy blonde man with a scar running through his forehead and left eye. On the sides of the blonde, 2 young men stood and smiled, looking at the resting guard, and behind them, there were 2 more, a man with glasses and a guy. Another guard asked them if they were students of the school, because he had not seen them before, and then asked them to show their student cards. The blonde-haired man smiled, clenching his teeth tightly. After that, the man broke through the wall in which there was a window, and his self. Then he grabbed the sitting guard, pinning him to the floor, saying that apparently he was not taught that strength is a ticket to any place. The man's eyes completely turned red and began to glow. The second guard, trembling with fear, tried to reach the radio and thought that this was a bad situation, so we need to report it faster. And the first guard at that moment was hanging like a rag doll, grabbed by the blonde man's head. But then, the guy who was standing next to him before the attack on the guards came into the room after the man. His eyes were the same as the blonde's. The guy was smiling and throwing a small stone with his hand. This guy threw a pebble with superhuman strength into the head of the guard who tried to ask for help through the radio. A puddle of blood splashed, and the guard's hand froze a few centimeters from the radio. The intruders went on with smiles, leaving behind the bodies of the guards. The students of the school stared in amazement at the appearance of the director. They talked about the fact that the ability to fly on a golden sword can only be achieved after reaching the golden pill. The principal of the Kaiyuan school is an elderly man with long gray hair and a thick gray mustache. He was dressed in a pantsuit, an elongated jacket and a white scarf were draped over his shoulders. The man's name is Wu Defa. This is the principal of the Kaiyuan school. The disciples, looking at him, hoped that they would be able to reach the golden pill as quickly as possible. The director arrived standing on a golden sword. The woman who landed in the crater regained consciousness and barely said anything about Ermengarde at death. Then she lost consciousness again. The director of the school told the doctors to help the woman first. Also, he announced that the 100th test ceremony in honor of admission to the University of Martial Arts has been suspended. The students were amazed by this, and they began to talk that something serious must have happened, since the ceremony was interrupted, because this has not been done since the founding of the Kaiyuan school. They hoped it wouldn't affect their entrance exams. The director went to the center of the arena, and then loudly asked the students to behave more restrained. After that, Wu Defa announced that the school had just received news that the Ermengarde order operating in the city was involved in the incident. In order to ensure safety, the school restricts access to a free exit from the school, so the director asked them not to be heroic. Also, Wu Defa said that each curator should ensure the safety of students. It is necessary to follow all instructions in an organized manner. The students were shocked by his announcement about the guilt of the Ermengarde order. After that, some began to run away from the arena, while saying that this is the same order that will even go over their heads just to get their way. The disciples have heard that the order does not hesitate to get rid of cultivators, so they are afraid. For everyone, the reason for the appearance of the Ermengarde order in the city of Wuji was unclear, hoping that everything would be fine with them. Someone in this stream stopped Su Lai by grabbing his arm. He turned around and saw Lu Xing. The girl was smiling and pulling the young man somewhere. The young man asked where she was going. She turned around and told Su Lai that it was related to his entrance exams. After a while, they found themselves in a small garden. Lu Xing told the young man that such an opportunity comes only once in a lifetime. Su Lai also asked what kind of opportunity we are talking about. Lu Xing started talking about the fact that a reward has been announced for the mission in Wuji City, and the whole thing is that Ermengarde is planning to invade their school. She was holding some paper that was rolled up into a tube. She also told Su Lai that if he caught the people from Ermengarde, then the martial arts university would definitely see his strength, and they would definitely accept the young man. In her hands she was holding an already unfolded piece of paper. It was written about the world search, namely, the Order of Ermengarde is wanted. Below this inscription were depicted 5 people, 5 men. They were all united by a tattoo in the form of a snake in the shape of an 8, passing from the neck to the shoulder and collarbone, and located on the left side. Under their portraits there was an inscription about the reward, namely, that 1 million was due. Su Lai asked the girl how she found out about this information. Lu Xing replied that her parents are law enforcement officers. They told her to be more observant. She also told him not to worry, because she would find people who could help him. Approaching him, Lu Xing whispered in his ear that they would share the reward equally, so everyone would be in the black, because, besides, Su Lai would definitely be able to enroll in the University of Martial Arts. At that moment, both were confused. The young man threw the paper aside and told the girl that he wouldn't go, so he just wanted to go back to the dorm. At this moment, he was thinking that he was still at the stage of Kai purification. If he goes to fight with such murderers, he will certainly die, because he does not look like a stupid person. Lu Xing was unhappy with his answer because, as she said, it was merciful on her part, but he does not appreciate the kindness of the girl at all. At the same time, she stamped her foot with displeasure and called him an idiot. Some student called Teacher Sun and notified him that there were problems. Teacher Sun Huey ran up to that student, asking him about what had happened. This student was Zhu Tao's ward. He said that Su Lai and Zhu Tao had an argument, several ribs were broken, they vomited blood. In general, they were left without strength. The teacher asked him if they had been helped, and then asked him to take him there. The young man agreed, and at that moment Sun Huey thought that Su Lai was still purifying her Kai, so she was clearly not Zhu Tao's equal. After that, Sun Huey summoned his power, enveloped himself in a blue vortex, grabbed Zhu Tao's ward, and they rushed with the help of his forces in that direction. Men's Dormitory, 3rd year building of Kaiyuan High School. The dormitory was a tall gray building, similar to a residential building. The man with the scar said about the current mission, namely, that within 24 hours it is necessary to kill the observer for the entrance exams of the Kaiyuan Wang Healo School. This was said by a man named Ao Ma. He was among the wanted. There were others with him, namely, a man in black round glasses, Ma Jixing, a brown-haired guy, Wang He, a short red-haired young man, Xin Guang, a guy with long purple hair, Liang Yangwei. Ao Ma threw his arms over the shoulders of Ma Jixing and Wang He, leaning on them, and said that the men's dormitory was a good place for them to hide, because the school teachers would definitely not think of looking for them in this place. Basically, they are the only ones responsible for this mission, judging by their cultivation base. Even if they stumble upon 5 or 6 teachers, they will still easily deal with them, and accordingly, the observer is in their teeth. The blonde man told them about all this. Ao Ma squeezed Wang He's neck with his hand and said that if the situation from the past repeats and they let someone leave, the consequences for them will be severe. Then he told the others to take action. Ma Jixing and Xin Guang jumped onto the ceiling and moved forward on it. Wang He and Liang Yangwei ran forward on the floor, and Ao Ma remained standing in place, smiling triumphantly, and with his hands on his hips. Su Lai was sitting in his room. Then a notification came to his phone. It was a new comment on his post. The young man suggested that his post is becoming more popular, because comments are already being typed. He was greeted by another young man who introduced himself as Meng Hui. He was with a basic level of cultivation. The young man wrote that he does not think about the possibility of being at the 10,000th level of purification of Kai Su Lai, which he is talking about. Meng Hui lived in the Martial Arts University dormitory and lived in room 101. He had dark blue hair, almost black in color, and also, he wore glasses. Meng Hui was communicating on the forum via a computer. Su Lai texted him that it was true. To this, he received the answer that first of all, he should understand that after reaching the 10th level of Kai purification, regardless of what skills he has, he, in any case, forms the basis for cultivation. Also, Meng Hui wrote that if Su Lai really has a 10,000th level, as he says, then he must have inexhaustible energy. Su Lai also thought that if this is true, then it turns out that he has a very large reserve of energy. He can be invincible. Meng Hui also wrote that he, nevertheless, offers to check the reliability of the device with which the measurements are carried out. He himself was laughing at the young man at that moment and thinking about why he should respond to such messages. For him, the current applicants are somehow inadequate. His gaze was arrogant. Sulai, after this communication, put the phone on the table with the screen down and thought that he didn't care as no one believed him. Sulai left his room at number 521. Walking down the corridor, he noticed that it was somehow too quiet. The young man decided to go to a safe place in case the Order of Ermengarde shows up. At that moment, he saw Wang He walking down the corridor. The guy at that moment thought that maybe there should still be people in the dorm at that time. After that, thinking who Sulai was, the young man himself was trying to figure out who the guy he met was. It seems to him that he has not seen him before. Wang He was glad that he was wearing a windbreaker from his school uniform. Otherwise, he would definitely have been caught. Sulai didn't say anything, but he noticed that points should be deducted for wearing such a uniform. The guy at that moment abruptly remembered, covering the tattoo, that he had forgotten to cover it, so he assumed that the young man recognized him. After that, he asked Sulai if he had seen her. Sulai himself did not understand what he was talking about specifically, assuming that he wanted to quarrel with him, but did not understand why the guy was doing this. But, nevertheless, the young man agreed. Wang He smiled fiercely and took off his windbreaker with one hand. After that, the guy sat down a little, surrounding himself with a black and red aura, and his eyes became completely red. He said that in this case, he had no way out, so he would have to kill the young man. Sulai was surprised by this, and Wang He rushed into the attack at that moment, while saying that he only has a level of Kai purification. If he collides with him, he will not be able to survive. Sulai noticed the snake tattoo on Wang He's neck and wondered why this sign seemed so familiar to him. The image of wanted people that Lu Xing had shown him earlier immediately appeared in his mind. On one of them there was just a silhouette of Wang He. After that, the young man realized that he was from Ermengarde. Wang He was already raising his fist to strike at that moment. Sulai was able to dodge the attack, but she was not stopped, and therefore, because of her, the wall behind the young man was destroyed. Sulai turned around to look at the destroyed wall and thought that the guy must be at the peak of laying the foundation, and if he hits him, he may die. Wang He raised both hands above his head this time to attack, while squeezing them into a lock. He tried to attack the young man from behind, while thinking that Sulai would not even be able to defend himself properly, so it's over for him. Sulai's eyes lit up with a blue glow, and then he was completely surrounded by this light. It was this that stopped Wang He's attack, which shocked him and did not understand what had happened. Sulai, declaring himself an aura, threw off Wang He. The guy did not understand what had happened. He wondered if the young man was really at the level of Kai purification. He had not seen such energy even among the representatives of the Golden Pill. The young man embraced himself with a blue aura. Wang He turned to Sulai, while grabbing himself by the collar of his t-shirt, and then tore it off and said that how dare he behave like that, being at the level of Kai purification. This young man angered him. Wang He embraced himself with a fiery aura and began attacking the young man with the fist of the meteor lion. At the same time, he thought that this time he would definitely defeat the young man. Sulai took his attack, protecting himself with an aura and, with his hands folded in a defensive gesture. The young man understood that he could only defend himself. Wang He didn't understand what was going on, because he couldn't move and it seemed to him that his power was being absorbed by Sulai. In addition, the guy was surrounded by the energy of a young man, and he thought that he had endless energy. Sulai gathered energy in his fist, raised it to strike, and then attacked Wang He, who then flew to the wall, and the floor cracked around the young man himself. Sulai was surprised by this. When he approached Wang He saw that he was lying unconscious, and there was his blood on the wall. Sulai didn't understand what was wrong with Wang He. He walked back and forth in front of him and did not understand how he could defeat a man with the foundations laid. There must have been something wrong with that. The young man suggested that it could all be because of his large amount of energy. At the same time, he recalled the correspondence with Manhua about his endless supply of energy. Sulai thought that besides, during the battle, Wang He's blood began to boil. If he took some medicine, then he could have had a myocardial infarction. The young man knocked the fist of his right hand against the palm of his left, saying at the same time that he was just lucky. Sulai thought that it was better for him not to leave Wang He in the corridor, because his allies might find him there. Sulai threw the hood of the windbreaker over his head, then grabbed Wang He by the hair and dragged him somewhere. Meanwhile, the academic building. Sun Huade and a disciple flew through the air on a blue sword from the teacher's power. Finally, they landed, finding themselves near Zhu Tao sitting on the ground. There was a dent in the wall next to his back, and his henchman was sitting on the side. Sun Hui looked at this picture and could not understand what could cause such a destructive force. He took a round pill from the breast pocket of his vest. The teacher sat down in front of Zhu Tao, fed him that pill and asked about what had happened. A green aura appeared around the young man, and his wounds began to heal. Zhu Tao replied at that moment that he and Su Lai had had an argument. He didn't think that he would be so serious, and when Zhu Tao realized everything, he was already slammed into the wall. Sun Hui did not understand how a person with the third stage of laying the foundations could suffer from the purification of Kai. After all, this is simply impossible. Zhu Tao's henchmen started talking about how Su Lai was still at the Kai purification level. Then how could he defeat Zhu Tao? They assumed that he must have resorted to dastardly methods. Therefore, the teacher must deal with him. Teacher Sun Hui thought that he has been teaching them for 3 years, so they probably think that he has not figured them out. For him, they are capable of more than that. Aloud, he told them that, to begin with, let them take Zhu Tao to a safe place, and he would sort everything out for now. While Zhu Tao and one of his subordinates, who was holding him, were leaving, the teacher watched them go, while the second subordinate bowed to Sun Hueda and said goodbye to him. Then someone asked the teacher about what had happened. After that, he turned around and replied, waving his arms, that it was nothing, just a student skirmish. 2 people appeared to his gaze, namely, a woman with a curvy shape, with black hair in a square hairstyle and glasses. The woman was dressed in a white shirt and a tight black skirt, and she had a red bandage on her forearm. Next to her was a man of strong build, with black hair, dressed in a white shirt and black trousers, and on his face he had sunglasses. The woman told Teacher Sun that the director had upgraded the mission to the rank of the killers had reached the 3rd level of laying the foundations. Besides, they had deadly weapons with them, so she asked him to be careful. The teacher thought about this mission of rank. After all, in recent years, there have been few missions of this rank. Ermengan must have been well prepared, he supposed. Observation room. There were several tables in the room, near which there were computer chairs, and there were computers on the tables. Sun Hui was standing near one of these tables. He looked at the computer monitor and thought about Su Lai, praying for the absence of a meeting with him in the next life. Also, he thought that Zhu Tao was aware of Su Lai's problems. Besides, Zhu Tao used to be number 2, it was some kind of imbalance. The teacher watched a video of Zhu Tao and Su Lai fighting, namely the moment with Zhu Tao throwing. Sun Hui was amazed that Su Lai had defeated a young man who was at the 3rd level of laying the foundations. He assumed about sudden blows. There is a sudden burst of energy which leads to a critical energy value. There is a random impulse, thanks to which you can defeat an opponent in just 1 blow, whose rank is an order of magnitude higher than your own. But there are very few such cases. Cultivation levels, Kai purification, foundation laying, golden pill, Yuanian, transformation, return, deliverance, Mahayana, and disaster. Sun Hui turned off the computer. He began to think that Su Lai has good abilities, therefore it is necessary to help him with admission to the University of Martial Arts. At this moment, one of the Ermengarde order was moving along the ceiling above the teacher. It was Xin Guang. He had a dagger in his mouth. Sun Hui saw the gleam of a dagger in the computer monitor. When Xin Guang jumped with an attack on the teacher, Sun Hui formed an emerald-colored energy in his right hand, with which he put a shield on Xin Guang's attack. Thanks to this action, the dagger flew out of the guy's hands, and he himself was thrown away. When Xin Guang landed on his feet, he told the teacher with a big smile that initially he just wanted to find some information in the observation room, and did not expect to meet someone in it. Sun Hui was angry because he saw the guy's tattoo. The teacher said out loud about Ermengarde and that they pretended to be students to get inside. The red-haired man only said that he could not leave the man alive, after which he quickly went on the attack, surrounding himself with orange-colored lightning. Under his feet and around Sun Hui, circles of emerald color began to appear. At the same time, he was standing in a fighting stance. Xin Guang attacked first with his fist, then with his elbow, and then with his foot. But Sun Hui defended himself from the entire shield in the form of a blurry haze forming a circle. Having covered himself from the last attack of the guy, the teacher shielded himself with his hands, holding a shield with them. The guy raised his fist for a new furious attack, while saying that the teacher is a dead man, who after his attack will be like a turtle. But Sun Hui surprised the red-haired man by catching his fist in his left hand. In his right hand, the man formed energy, which then covered his arm, and attacked Xin Guang in the stomach with this hand. The redhead flew into the wall, causing damage to it. Blood gushed out of his mouth. Xin Guang sank to the floor, while holding on to the place of impact in the solar plexus with one hand, and tried to clear his throat, but at the same time he stared intently and angrily at the teacher. At this moment, the red-haired man was thinking that Sun Huade is very strong, so he has no other way out. After these thoughts, Xinguang took out some graphite-colored balls from his pants pocket and told the teacher that he would get even with him later. Then the guy threw the balls on the floor, which then caused a smoke screen to rise. Sun Huade was thinking that he needed to report the penetration of Ermengarde into the school campus. His gaze was full of seriousness. Meanwhile, the male dormitory of the Kaiyuan school, Liang Yonghui and Ma Jixing were in one of the rooms. The first one asked the black-haired man about the reason why Wang He has not returned yet. At the same time, he was holding and smoking a pipe. Liang Yonghui, with a smirk on his face, suggested that he might have been killed. Ma Jixing replied by saying that Wang He is a cultivator of the 9th rank, so he is not so easy to kill. After that, he decided to follow him, which he told his friend about. The black-haired man, being already outside that office, said out loud that Liang Yonghui had just got to the rank of the Golden Pill, and he was already so brave. But Ma Jixing was sure that he and Wang He would soon catch up with him. Coming out of the corner of the corridor, Ma Jixing saw someone. His eyes widened in surprise, and all because he saw Wang He, the defeated and dead Wang He, who was dragged by a young man with one hand, leaving a trail of blood on the floor. Ma Jixing hid behind a corner. He was shaking with fear, and he thought that maybe that guy wants to show off Van he defeated. For the man, the situation was turbulent. He did not understand what to do, because the young man is not a weakling, since he was able to deal with Wang He alone. He was afraid he might end up the same way. He decided to do something because of the lack of other options, while taking something covered in fire from his inner breast pocket. It was a gun. Ma Jixing recalled his conversation with Ao Ma, namely, as a blonde man, having given a gun to a black-haired man in his hands. He said that this gun was the latest weapon developed by Ermengarde. It absorbs spiritual power, and then abruptly throws it out. At the same time, it increases the power of the blow several times compared to the usual strength of cultivators. Ma Jixing was smiling broadly, gritting his teeth and thinking that the power of the shot would be more powerful than during the Golden Pill period. After that, he abruptly jumped out from around the corner, thinking that he would certainly defeat the young man, and began to form energy in the gun. After sufficient energy formation, the black-haired man fired. This energy was also felt by other people who were outside the hostel, and the bullet was flying at the young man's head with might and main. But she flew off his head into the wall next to Ma Jixing's head, which scared him, and then flew to the floor at the feet of the young man. This youth was Su Lai. He took off his hood, but the bullet did no harm. The young man did not understand what had happened, so he turned around to look. Su Lai saw a bullet in the floor, which caused cracks in the floor. The young man sat down and picked up the flattened bullet. He looked at her, while considering her a piece of iron, and also wondering where she even came from. Several people gathered near the hostel. Among them were Director Wu Defat and teacher Sun Huade. The director told the teacher that he also noticed fluctuations in strength, assuming that it was the work of Ermengarde. Sun Huade agreed with him, saying at the same time that he was attacked by one of them in the training building. He suggested that they could be everywhere, but their conversation was interrupted by some stirring from the forest. The director asked who was there, while forming a golden sphere in his hands. It was Lu Xing, who, when she got out of the bushes, waved her hands to them and greeted the principal and the teacher. They were surprised at the appearance of the girl and asked how she ended up in this place. Lu Xing said she was looking for Su Lai because she was afraid he might be in danger. The teacher tensely asked her about the fact that Su Lai was still in the dorm. A woman with glasses was also in front of the hostel with them, and was trying to figure out what to do, because the young man probably already encountered members of the Ermengarde. Sun Huade turned around, but the director at that moment told him not to act recklessly, because the person who released such energy is at the rank of a golden pill, no less. But the teacher did not listen to him, resolutely going forward, and saying that one of their students was still inside. He needed help. At the same time, he thought that even if Su Lai uses the technique that he used during the fight with Zhu Tao, his opponent is at the rank of the golden pill, so it won't help him. The director at Def cleared his throat, attracting the teacher's attention, but he did not pay attention to it. After that, the headmaster appeared in front of Sun Huade and said that, as the headmaster of the school, he could not leave it like this. Then he summoned the golden sword and said that he would go ahead. A man and a woman began to take out some black sticks that were located behind their backs and on their hips. While they were doing this, the director told them to walk behind and tread carefully. After that, they all went inside the dorm. Meanwhile, Su Lai noticed Ma Jixing in front of him and thought that the bullet had fallen from him. The young man noticed a revolver in the man's hand and thought that he had decided to kill him. Ma Jixing was shaking with fear and trying to force himself to move. He was thinking that he had failed, so he needed to leave as soon as possible. The man was afraid that Su Lai would attack him and start torturing him, so his death would not be painless. Su Lai stared intently at the man and did not understand what he was doing. At first, according to the young man, he threw pieces of iron, and then he beats himself at all. Does the man really want the young man to run away from him? Su Lai clutched the bullet in his hands and was grateful to Ma Jixing. Aloud, the young man said that perhaps he would not be able to defeat him, but he could not leave everything like this. The man didn't understand what he was talking about. Meanwhile, Su Lai prepared to attack, making a swing with the hand that had the bullet in it. The young man thought that he would use this piece of iron to distract attention, and then he would strike and defeat him. Su Lai threw a bullet at the man, shouting that he was returning it. Ma Jixing stood and shook with fear while mentally asking for help. He was thinking about why he couldn't move. After that, the bullet flew through. Ma Jixing's body went limp and fell. The young man was surprised that he had succeeded and thought that he might have talents that he had not noticed before. He had a hard time with one intruder, and then another one appeared. Then, Su Lai noticed a revolver that was lying not far from the man's body. The young man ran up to the gun, which was still burning with energy. He took it in his hand, saying with a smile that the gun looked impressive, so he would take it away. Perhaps it might come in handy. Liang Yonghui was hiding behind one of the corners, watching the youth. He didn't understand what was wrong with him and how he could have killed Wang Qi and Ma Jixing. Liang Yonghui understood that fighting face to face was certain death for him, but if he left, he would also die, and attacking stealthily was also risky. The man was preparing for an attack, summoning energy to one of his hands. He was tense about the development of events, but then he was interrupted by someone calling from the stairs that led to the floor where he and the young man were. Liang Yonghui realized that one of the owners of the golden pill was on the way, so he had to leave. With his hand, he dispelled the energy. Liang Yonghui abruptly ran away from where he had been standing towards the corridor. The director and the others hid behind the wall on the stairwell. At that moment, Su Lai hid the gun in his belt at his stomach. He was wondering what to do, because, judging by the voice, it was the director. Su Lai thought that if those who came to his aid saw the bodies around him, they would think that he was one of the members of the Ermengarde. The young man was thinking about what he should do. An idea came to his head, thanks to which he decided to improvise. The young man came up with the idea to make it look like they themselves fell on each other, and then dragged the bodies of the men who lost to him. After that, he put them right next to each other. He made Wang He's left hand, clenched into a fist, rested on Ma Jixing's forehead, and his right hand held his right hand, clenched into a fist at his chest. But then, from a flight of stairs into the corridor where Su Lai was, the director burst in. The director was surprised by the presence of the young man, so he asked him where he came from there at all, and also what he was doing there. Su Lai laughed awkwardly because of his questions. But then, an explosion rang out on the floor, which completely blew out one window, and then Liang Yonghui jumped out of it. When he landed, he looked back at the dorm building. After that, he went to his wall and activated purple energy on his hand, which began to flow around him. Liang Yonghui was smiling broadly, summoning more and more of his energy and directing it into the building. Thanks to this energy, he saw where the people who are inside the hostel are and what they are doing. Thanks to the energy, some kind of dragon was also shown, which was in an incomprehensible and unknown place. It was a battlefield. A man fought a dragon, but was easily defeated. The dragon looked out with his red eye from the portal that was in the dormitory. Su Lai greeted the principal, the teacher, and the headman who came to him. At that moment, the young man thought that they would understand everything. The director approached the bodies of the fallen and asked the young man what it was. Su Lai stiffened, and the director turned around and looked at him with a serious look. Here, Def was enveloped in his energy, glowing with a golden glow. After that, he directed it at the young man, who covered himself with his hands and began to talk about the mistake. But Su Lai felt that the energy was not dangerous for him. He was very scared, afraid that the director might do something to him. Wu Defa was thinking at that moment that Su Lai was still at the stage of Kai purification, thinking that someone else was responsible for the deaths of those people. After that, he cleared his throat, and after that he told the young man to leave there, otherwise he could be in danger at any moment. The director used his energy and found out that the victims were at the stage of laying the foundations. He didn't understand how someone could kill the two of them at once. He began to feel their bodies, first Wang He, and noted that his body did not transform and was often beaten. Wang He took nerve-stimulating drugs all year round, and the cause of his death was a soul rupture. After that, Wu Defa proceeded to examine Ma Jixing's wound. He realized that it was a fatal blow, and the person who inflicted it should be at the level of a golden pill, and no less. Su Lai definitely had nothing to do with it. The director pulled back the collar of Ma Jixang's clothes and looked at his tattoo. After that, he confirmed that they were members of Yermungand. The man's gaze was frowning. Def stuck his sword in the floor. The director thought about what he needed to look at, because, perhaps, to find some clues, because the members of the Yermungand would not have come to school just like that. The man adjusted his gloves and began to take pills out of the pockets of the dead. He listed that the Dabu pill, the Sisui pill, the Tianling pill all do not fit. After listing them, he put those pills in the breast pocket of his vest. Su Lai told the director that he was not quite convincing, and also that if he did not need it, then let him give the pills to the young man, because they might be useful to him. But then the director found something in the pocket of Wang He's pants. He took it in his hand, or rather an unusual cube of black color with red glowing inclusions. Def said it was a tetragonal seal. Apart from a specialist, no one else knows how to open it. The material of the seal is very hard, so it will not be possible to simply break it. After these words, the director handed the seal to teacher Sun Hueda, asking him to send the seal to the laboratory later, where it could be opened. The teacher accepted the seal. But then the cube fell, hit the floor, and then flew up to Su Lai and hit his sneakers. Because of this, the seal exploded. It amazed everyone. Sun Hueda suggested that perhaps it was Su Lai's energy raging again. Su Lai sat down on the floor, reaching for the cube with his hand, while saying that it was not his fault for what had happened. The young man at this moment was thinking about what he had been told about the difficulty of opening the seal, then why it opened. The young man picked up some kind of plate with a small red flashlight, which was inside the cube, and said that it was a communicator. The director immediately took him away. Udef said that the cipher is not particularly complicated, so he can easily figure it out. The director summoned his power and held the communicator with energy over his palm. The communicator's light bulb turned green, and it opened. A hologram of a man in a robe and with a tattoo of Ermengarde appeared to the eyes of those present. This person was saying that after Huang Heabo, the supervisor of the entrance exams, comes to Kaiyuan school, the order members should send 2 people to divert attention and kill the observer. The rest must destroy the energy collection tower according to the original plan. The man in the robe told the members of the Order of Ermengarde not to make a mistake. After these words of his, the recording ended, and the hologram disappeared. The director informed everyone that the purpose of the Ermengarde was not an observer. Their true mission was the destruction of the energy tower. Also, he added that the 2 defeated were just puppets. Wu Defa also said that as soon as the tower collapses, about 60% of the buildings will be unusable, so they will not receive energy. The energy stored in the tower will immediately spill out, with a force equivalent to an atomic bomb, which will spread to the entire city. The director was very tense and informed everyone that the real target was Wuji City. Su Lai raised his hand and said, turning to the director, that he had a question. The young man asked the director that if everything is so, then how could such important information be in the hands of the wrong people? Lu Xing agreed with the young man's words and said that the information might not be true, but it could still cause panic. The director replied that, regardless of the reliability, they must protect the tower, as it is a matter of security for the whole city. If they don't do anything, all cultivators will fail because of Ermengarde. That's what Director Wu Defa said. He was furious and involuntarily released his energy, the power of which amazed Su Lai and Lu Xing. The director took out his phone, on the screen of which it was written that he had failed to send a message. Everyone present started checking their phones for a signal. As a result, no one had a connection. They didn't understand what was going on. After that, it was decided to split up. A man and a woman ran into one corridor, and the principal, teachers in, Su Lai and Lu Xing ran in the other direction. They had to hurry up and publish the news. The director, running out from around the corner, saw some kind of portal. He did not understand how it happened and where the stairs disappeared down. The others who came running after him also didn't understand anything. Su Lai started to walk towards the portal, but the director stopped him and said that it was probably the tricks of the Yermungand, who wanted to lure them into a trap and cut off contacts between the outside world. Also, he said that first, they need to find out if they can get to other places. They turned around after the words from Def and went in the other direction from the portal. At that moment something began to appear from the portal. It was something inhuman, with scales and claws. His eyes were burning red. They all ran down the corridor together and saw that the bodies on the floor that had been lying there earlier were not in place. Lu Xing pointed her finger at that place and said about this fact. They ran up to that place. The director sat down on the floor and ran his gloves over the floor. Looking closely at his fingers, he said that the floor was covered with dust. Besides, there was no blood in that place. The bodies most likely just disappeared. But then, Def said they were on the wrong floor. Lu Xing and Su Lai looked back at the corridor they had come from. The girl said that how is this possible, because they were definitely returning the same way. But then they noticed that the principal and the teacher were not with them. They began to look around. Su Lai suddenly took the girl's hand, thereby embarrassing her. And after that, he led Lu Xing down the corridor, continuing to hold his hand. At the same time, he himself was embarrassed and said that there was no director and teacher, so they should not be separated. Because of this they should stick together. Lu Xing was still confused, but they did not see that a dragon was crawling on the ceiling ahead of them. When he crawled up to them, he tried to attack the girl, opening his mouth wide and wanting to eat her. But Su Lai managed to sense the danger. Thanks to this, the young man managed to pull the girl almost out of the monster's mouth. Lu Zai and the monster's gazes crossed. After that, the young man pulled the girl after him, telling her that they were running away. The monster was rushing after them, almost catching up with them. Then Su Lai saw an open door to one of the rooms. He pulled Lu Xing into it and closed the door with lightning speed. They started moving things to the door. They were boxes, suitcases, and stuff. The monster was trying to get to them by knocking on the door. He knocked on the door with such force that cracks began to spread around it on the wall. And at some point he calmed down. Su Lai and Lu Xing leaned against the things that were propping up the door. The girl tried to pull her hand out of the young man's hand, but he did not let her do it, strengthening his grip, which surprised the girl. Su Lai, trying to catch his breath, asked the girl if she was okay. The girl, breathing heavily, turned away in embarrassment and agreed. Su Lai didn't understand what was wrong with her, but they didn't know yet that two blue eyes were watching them from the ventilation. They were the eyes of a monster. The monster broke through the ventilation grate with his paw, and then he broke through this grate to the end, sticking half of his body out of the ventilation, and growled loudly. At that moment, Lu Xing clung to Su Lai in fright and screamed. Su Lai took out a pistol from his belt, which was raised near Ma Jixang's body. At the same time, the young man thought about what he had almost forgotten, and also, Su Lai did not quite understand how to use this gun. Su Lai thought that he could only take full advantage of one thing. After that, the young man pointed the blazing gun at the monster, accumulating energy for the shot. The monster itself was advancing on him at that moment, its mouth wide open. There was a shot. Su Lai's hands twitched from the recoil, and the monster was hit by an attack, or rather, a shot from a pistol, like from a laser cannon. Lu Xing was clinging to the young man at the moment of the shot. Su Lai was glad that his idea was a success when the monster fell defeated. The girl, still holding on to Su Lai, asked him about where he got this gun. To this she received an answer that he found it from the defeated members of the Ermengarde, and he simply forgot to give it to the director. Su Lai and Lu Xing were sitting on the floor in front of the body of the defeated monster, under whose body a pool of blood was spreading. They both didn't understand what kind of monster it was. He seemed creepy to them. Lu Xing looked at the monster with a serious face and said about the sharp corners on it, similar to the blades of the handle. A portrait of this monster, or rather the ancient horned dragon Astrosratops, appeared in her head. There was also a description of him. The dragon had a mobile body, the head was covered with protruding horns. Besides, very sharp. Most often, the dragon lives in groups. Lu Xing told the young man that if she thinks correctly, this monster is a horned dragon. Su Lai was startled by this. The girl also said that this is a kind of social monster, and this means that there can be 5, 10 or even more. At this moment, several dragons like the one Su Lai defeated were passing through the corridor. One of the dragons passed by the door of the room where the guys were. Su Lai was looking through the peephole of the door at this moment, standing ready to attack. He was thinking that when there was only one dragon left in the corridor, they would have a chance to get out. The young man looked at the frightened Lu Xing, who was sitting on the floor next to him. Su Lai told her not to worry too much, because everything would be fine. Once they find the source of the dragons, Su Lai thinks that they will be able to return the dorm to its original state and get out of there. The young man asked that besides, hadn't he just dealt with the monster? Also, he told Lu Xing to calm down, because he wouldn't let Yermangan's plans come to fruition. At that moment, Xin Guang sneezed. He and Liang Yonghui were on the grounds of Kaiyuan's school. They were sitting on one of the school buildings. The young man asked Liang Yonghui about how their plan was progressing. Liang Yonghui, smoking a pipe, said with a serious expression that Wang He and Ma Jixang were dead. Xin Guang was shocked and asked the senior comrade about how it happened. The answer to this question was given to him that Wang He and Ma Jixang were too careless and underestimated the enemy. In Liang Yonghui's eyes, Su Lai was a fierce and incredibly strong young man. He had never seen such strong people before, so the man hoped that he would never meet Su Lai again. Xinguang took out a red stone, on which the sign of the Order of Ermengarde was located in the middle. He said they definitely needed to report everything. Liang Yonghui rushed to stop him. At the same time, he told the young man, in no case should they say anything, because if the commander finds out that they could not even deal with the student, then he will definitely get angry. They didn't know what to do. An image of an evil commander appeared in Xinguang's head, tearing them apart. The young man began to shake with fear and said that the fact was that Liang Yonghui had not seen their commander in action, because if they did not complete the task, they would definitely come to an end. But Liang Yonghui only grinned at these words of his and said that it was not worth worrying, because he lured the headmaster of the Kaiyuan school and that student into a trap. Now they definitely won't be hindered by anything. At the same time, Liang Yonghui said all this, approaching right next to Xinguang. He also said that if they completed the task, no one would even remember Wang He and Ma Jixiang. Liang Yonghui held a canopy in one hand with the help of an energy communicator and said that they were continuing. At that moment, a hologram of the school grounds appeared from the communicator. Meanwhile, one dragon was moving along the corridor. Su Lai listened to what was going on outside the door and then said that he and Lu Xing were starting. The young man put his hand on the door handle and then abruptly opened it. Su Lai, holding Lu Xing's hand, flew out of the room and concentrated the energy in the gun, preparing to fire it. The monster turned his head in their direction, but he did not have time to do anything as he was hit by a pistol shot, which caused his head to separate from his body. The dormitory was surrounded by a dark-colored dome that sparkled with purple lightning. Director Wu Defa and teacher Sun Dehui were on the 8th floor of the dormitory, while Su Lai and Lu Xing were on the 2nd floor. The portal from which the monsters came out was on the stairway from the 1st to the 2nd floor. Teacher Sun said that everything was strange because a lot of time has passed, but they still can't determine their location. The director also said, opening the doors to some room, that in any case, they needed to find Su Lai and Lu Xing as soon as possible, because they could be in danger. In his opinion, the students were not yet able to resist. But then, behind the slightly open doors, the teacher and the director saw some monsters, which were dragons. After a momentary surprise, both sides prepared to attack. The dragons went on the attack first, but came across a golden-colored shield, which surrounded himself and the teacher-director at deaf. After that, the director told teacher Sun to go ahead, because he would figure it out himself. After obtaining consent to this, Wu Defei enveloped his fist with a golden aura, and then attacked the dragon, hitting and driving it into the floor of the dormitory. Teacher Sun stood behind the headmaster on a dragon that was bound by chains created by him. Wu Defei drew attention to the teacher and then approached him and the monster with a threatening look and said that he had not fought like this for a long time. Both were with a determined look. After that, the dragon was defeated. A young man was sitting on the floor against the wall in the corridor and was shaking with fear. A monster was coming at him menacingly. The young man waved him away with a bat and told him not to approach him. And so the dragon raised his clawed paw and cut the young man's bat into pieces. The young man, shrinking, shouted and asked for help. The monster's muzzle was already closed to him, but then something broke through the monster's head, and the young man continued to sit huddled. Then someone told him to get up, because he was safe now. When the young man opened his eyes and saw in front of him Su Lai, who was standing at the ready with a gun, and a smiling Lu Xing. The young man called Su Lai by name and said that he was also in the dorm, then thanked him. Su Lai was surprised that the young man knew him. The young man replied to him that he had given a speech at last year's admission ceremony, and had always been a role model. The young man was very happy at the time of the speech. Su Lai agreed with him and asked why he was still in the dorm, because before that there was a warning about moving to a safer place. The young man replied that he overslept, and when he wanted to leave the room, he suddenly ran into a monster already at the door of the room. Su Lai smiled and told the young man to follow him and keep up. Lu Xing was also smiling. After a while, Su Lai, Lu Xing and the young man were sneaking down the stairs. Su Lai stopped his travelers, while carefully peeking around the corner. Then they were all amazed at the picture that appeared in front of them around the corner. It was a blue-colored portal. The portal led to a world where there were other dragons like the ones they had met earlier. Su Lai came out ahead of the guys and said that he would go first. If he didn't come back, then let them run away. They didn't need to wait for him. His gaze at that moment was serious and resolute. Before he left, Su Lai handed the gun to Lu Xing and told her to take it. If they were in a dangerous situation, then let her use it. The girl accepted the gun and told Su Lai to take care of herself. Entering the portal, Su Lai thought that he needed to be more careful, The dragon slept for a long time and then suddenly woke up. Sulai, already standing at the portal, looked at the sleeping dragons and thought that the portal was most likely the main reason for the appearance of dragons in the dormitory. The young man suggested that if the portal was destroyed, everything would return to its former course. But then, a dragon's muzzle appeared from behind the portal, and then the monster attacked Sulai with its paw. The young man jumped away from where he was and the dragon's paw landed there. This dragon was different from those that had previously appeared from the portal. He was several times bigger than those dragons. His body was covered with black scales with patches of yellow and orange. The dragon was surrounded by a black and red aura. Losing and the young man shaking behind her looked at Sulai and the dragon in a frightened way. Sulai himself stopped at the portal at that moment. He looked at it and the dragon sleeping behind it and realized that the portal was not transmitting sounds. Therefore, he had to make decisions, otherwise, the monsters might wake up. Sulai clenched his hand into a fist and embraced him with energy. After that, he went on the attack and slammed his fist into the dragon's face. But this attack had no effect. Sulai was surprised by this and thought about the reason why his power evaporated exactly the moment he touched it. The dragon threw Sulai away with his paw. Losing covered her mouth with one hand and thought about what the young man should do, because he is not a rival to the dragon. Meanwhile, Sulai was recovering. The dragon threw him so hard into the wall that it cracked in the place where he landed. At this moment, Losing was thinking that she needed to calm down, because Sulai is in danger and she is the only one who can help him. Sulai thought that the monster was different from the previous ones. The outer shell could not be penetrated by its own strength. His usual attack wouldn't change anything. He knew that himself. But then, Losing fired several shots at the dragon, which covered itself from them with a paw. The bullets did not bring any harm to the dragon, but on the contrary only angered him. The monster looked at the girl with a ferocious look. She couldn't understand why her attacks didn't work. Sulai shouted at the girl to run away. The dragon was already coming at her, and Losing tried to shoot back at him and told him not to approach. Sulai grabbed the dragon's hind leg with both hands. At that moment, the dragon was trying to eat the girl, and when his jaw did not close on her, he was surprised. The monster turned around and saw Sulai, who was holding his paw, declaring himself energy. The young man reminded the dragon that he was his opponent, so let him not dare to be distracted from him. His gaze burned with determination and energy. After that, he said that he would take the dragon home. After that, he spun the monster around and threw it into the portal. This woke up the other dragons and did not understand what had happened. After this hitch, the dragons rushed into the portal. Sulai embraced his right fist with energy and said that it was better for the monsters to be on the other side of the portal. After that, the young man flew into the portal. After this attack of his, the portal began to tighten. Already in the almost missing portal, Sulai said goodbye to the monsters with a smile and said that he hoped about the absence of their meeting in the future. Here the portal finally closed, and the black dragon finally tried to attack the young man with his paw. The monster was not happy with this, so the sky of the place where they were burst out with his roar. The sports ground of the Kaiyuan school. Liang Yanghui was walking on the roof of the playground. He put some kind of small installation at one of the pillars. At the same time, he thought that soon everyone would know the true power. But then a voice came from behind him. This person asked Liang Yanghui about which course he was from. After that, he turned around and saw two similar young men in front of him. One of them had a monocle on his eye. His name is Cheng Feng. The other was standing with a tablet in his hands. His name is Cheng Lu. Both of them are teachers. Cheng Feng said that all the students had to evacuate and clarified that Liang Yanghui had not been notified about this and that he had forgotten in that place. Liang Yanghui looked angrily at the teachers and said that it was bothering him because he wasn't going to be particularly stressed. But apparently there was nothing left for him. At that moment, the teachers noticed the tattoo on Liang Yanghui's neck. Cheng Feng said that Liang Yanghui was from the Yermangand order, so they need to notify others. Cheng Lu put his hand in his pants pocket, but then Liang Yanghui's attack flew between them. His hands and himself were surrounded by black-red energy. He smiled angrily and said that they should not hope for help, because none of the teachers of the school are capable of anything. Liang Yanghui halted the dark flame. Using a high-speed punch, uses spiritual force to distort space and produce vibrations. Liang Yanghui said that, in his opinion, two insignificant people were very unlucky. At the same time, he went on the attack. The teacher's hands were embraced by blue-colored energy, and then they almost touched the palms, which were more and more surrounded by energy. Then they put their hands forward to attack, forming a sphere. Liang Yanghui was struck by the fact of joint cultivation. Joint cultivation is a type of cultivation in which the forces of two or more people are combined to produce a powerful attack. The energy of the teachers and Liang Yonghui collided, becoming a single ball, one half of which was red with black flecks, and the other half was blue. The wind rose around her. Liang Yonghui flew away due to this attack, sliding on the floor. He thought that the previous technique had consumed too much of his energy, and the dark flame was also expending a decent amount of energy. There was not much energy left. While the dust was settling, the teachers went on the attack, intending to attack Liang Yonghui from the air. Liang Yonghui managed to jump away from the attack, and one of the teachers landed on the place where he was standing, breaking the floor. At that moment, Cheng Lu jumped out from behind Cheng Feng. Cheng Lu attacked with a leg that was covered with energy with a Liang Yonghui turn. He managed to put out his hands in a defensive gesture. Meanwhile, Cheng Feng went on the attack again. He leaned his arm on Cheng Lu's shoulder and jumped, attacking with his foot. Liang Yonghui was surprised by this attack, but nevertheless managed to dodge. And again, Cheng Lu went on the attack, who raised his fist to strike and embraced him with energy. Liang Yonghui realized that he couldn't dodge when the fist had almost reached Liang Yonghui, but then a man appeared in a golden glow between him and the teachers, which surprised them. This man was Ao Ma, Cheng Feng said in surprise about the appearance of another enemy. To this, Cheng Lu said that what he was afraid of, you just need to kill the enemies. At the same time, he prepared his fist for a blow, in which he concentrated energy. Ao Ma snorted at this, and then raised his arm above his head to strike, covering it with energy. After that, he attacked Cheng Lu, cutting him in two. Cheng Feng called his name and reached out with his hand. After that, he jumped up, concentrated the energy in his fist to attack, and said that he was his opponent. Ao Ma said that he was looking for death, after which he kicked him in the stomach. Cheng Feng coughed up blood and then was thrown away. Liang Yonghui was surprised by the appearance of Commander Ao Ma. The dome around the Kaiyuan school dormitory began to disappear. Su Lai was lying on the floor and said that, finally, everything was back on track. Lu Xing and the young man he had saved were sitting on the floor next to him. The strange spiritual force disappeared. A message came to the director's phone, in which it was written about his payment arrears, so he was asked to pay it on time. He told Teacher Sun out loud that the signal had been restored. The director at Defa thought that they had been locked up in the dorm for too long, so he wouldn't even know how far Yermungand had progressed in their plans, so they needed to gather all the teachers as soon as possible. Director, leaving the scene of the battle, I told Teacher Sun Hueda to inform all the teachers so that they would immediately head to the tower. The teacher followed him. Behind them, in one of the ruined walls, there was a defeated dragon. Meanwhile, the Kaiyuan school's energy collection tower. Some teachers were in the air near this tower. They were floating on their swords. One of the teachers, a woman with short black hair and red eyes, special teacher Lu Cheng, made a suggestion. She said that everyone had already received a message from the director, which spoke about the importance of guarding the energy collection tower. The blonde man, teacher Yuan Zhen, said that he understood everything, so they can't let the members of the Ermengan get in. Lu Cheng turned to teacher Chen and asked if she had contacted other teachers. The woman who was Chen Yinyi's teacher, who had brown hair and blue eyes, replied that Teacher Sun and the director were patrolling together, and communication with the other two was lost. At that moment, Ao Ma grabbed Liang Yonghui by the neck and said that the two at the stage of laying the foundations almost overpowered him. It's a shame for a member of Ermengan. Liang Yonghui said he would explain everything. He began to explain breathlessly that a student at the Kai purification level had killed Wang He and Ma Jixang. If not for that, he would have been able to complete this mission long ago. Ao Ma told him that one person at the level of Kai purification killed Wang He and Ma Jixang, who were at the stage of laying the foundations, and clarified that he should believe it. Liang Yonghui was already gasping for breath, grabbing the commander's hand. He asked Ao Ma to give him another chance. Liang Yonghui said that everything is almost finished, because only the energy collection tower remains. At the same time, he raised his hand with the communicator in it. The commander said that he was still useful, grabbed the communicator and released Liang Yonghui. Ao Ma, opening the hologram from the communicator, saying that he was leaving the tower on Liang Yonghui so he could make amends. Liang Yonghui was trying to catch his breath. Ao Ma grinned and put his hand on Tom's shoulder, and then said that even if he died, he still had to plant the last bomb. Only in this case the task of Ermengan would be completed. Commander Ao Ma's face at this moment was terrifying and full of rage. Liang Yonghui was terrified to the point of shaking and, in a stuttering voice, replied that he understood everything. Ao Ma wrapped his hand in energy and put it on his shoulder.